Wanted to the Rebbe the words of the new song that we're singing with Mashiach, right? So I'm just going to read him. Am Yisrael, have no fear. Mashiach will be here this year. We want Mashiach now. We don't want to wait. Okay? Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now, oh yeah, Am Yisrael, have no fear, Mashiach will be this year. Am Yisrael, have no fear, Mashiach will be here this year. We want Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now, we don't want to wait. We want Mashiach now, Mashiach now, we don't want to wait. Am Yisrael, have no fear, Mashiach will be here this year. Am Yisrael, have no fear, Mashiach will be here this year. We want Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now, we don't want to wait. We want Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now, we don't want to wait. Hey!
So welcome everyone, welcome back Graham, and welcome Lance or Lazarus to Asher's Orchard. So today we're talking about political and religious discussions in a hyper-polarized world. And I actually got the inspiration for this from Lazarus or from Lance. Also, how do you want me to call you?
You can call me whichever one you want. It's fine.
Yeah, I'll just call you Lance because that's what you have as name here. So let me see if I can find it because I just realized that I accidentally dropped the link to it, so I need to pull it back up real quick. But shoot, I should have just sent the tweet to myself. That would have made things easier. But okay, here I think found it. So when talking about Lazarus here, Lance said when talking about Christianity, conservatives. And again, I assume you're not talking about all conservatives or all liberals, but just,
I'm generalizing.
So when talking about Christianity, conservatives presume I'm a stupid liberal, and libs or liberals presume I'm a stupid conservative. If they quit presuming and inserting politics into it, the convo might actually go somewhere. Besides presuming everyone's stupid but them, I hate that it's like this. So then I responded, would you like to come on my channel to talk about this concept? I suffer a similar misunderstanding due to being a scholar interested in historiography. Also, being a Jew is interested in reviving old Israelite traditions. I feel like we could have a really good discussion. So you agreed to come on, and this was literally, I think it was yesterday that we just kind of put this together, and it's nice that it came together pretty, it worked out. But if you wouldn't mind sharing, is there anything in particular that kind of made you think about posting that?
Yeah, so I'm not gonna name the name, but it was somebody that they were like they had this post about, I can't remember what the post was about now, but they were talking and they were just like, they're like a very I want to say hardcore conservative, I guess. I don't know how to even describe them because it's very radical to me, honestly. But it's even radical for conservatives in my opinion. But it's like anti-vax, anti-science, all of this stuff. And I'm just like, okay, but of course, I'm talking to this person, they're like trying to paint me as this super massive, just evil socialist liberal. And I'm like, my politics, at least, I'm socialist, but I'm not super socialist, I guess you would say. I'm more realistic, where I'm like, okay, if I could get one thing accomplished in my life with some kind of socialist policy like paid family leave or something, I'd be happy with that. Like I'm pretty reasonable. Um, but they painted out like I'm just some super liberal, but like religious wise, I'm pretty conservative. Um, like I do keep a pretty conservative, like Eastern Orthodox mindset about most stuff. Like, yeah, I'm gonna tell you, like, I'm gonna tell you like what we teach. I'm gonna pretty much stick to the basics and try to help people live their life the way that I feel like Christ calls us to do. Um, so like, it's just funny to me because I'll have conversations like that where, they think I'm like some super massive liberal because I'm like, hey, why don't we love people? Like all these people that you hate on, why don't you love them? And then like on the other side, I'll be saying something and they're like, oh, that darn conservative boy right there, he's telling you something. And you're like, okay, like I wasn't trying to do either side there, but okay. It's just we're such a polarized society that like no matter what you say, like everyone's just gonna like nitpick, till it's just like, what are we even doing? Why are we even putting these Twitter posts on stuff like that?
I think it's kind of indicative or symptomatic of cancel culture, which like with anything, there is a good and a bad side. But I think like for instance, I'm trying to think of an example. I mean, like at the end of the day, it's one thing if you're talking about someone being canceled because they're basically saying they want people to die or whatever. But that's such an extreme situation. And obviously, there's people who they can use their money to support or to not support people who say things that they don't like. But then you have this idea where it's almost like gotten to this level in our social world where where it becomes about cloud. It's not actually about doing what's right. It's about getting this feeling or making people think that you're right, even if you're not.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of to me like there's certain commentators now online where they're saying like, well, we should ban transgenderism altogether, and so they're like saying like, yeah, we should like they're basically like calling to genocide all transgender people, and I'm like, you can disagree with, I mean, you can disagree with like their lifestyle, you can disagree with their choices, like, but you want to kill them? Like, really? Like, are you really, like, you don't really believe this, right? And some of them do, but it's like, it's just like, dude, like everybody's insane to even consider that, like,
I think
especially, yeah.
I was just going to say, I think that's kind of the point, though. Most people aren't like, yeah, let's go kill these people, but it's about desensitizing people to violence. So it's like, even if they're not like, oh, well, I would do this, they're like, if they hear it happening around them, they might be more willing to just be like, oh, well, what can I do about it?
Right. Yeah, and I mean I've seen kind of the same thing like how Alex Jones will always talk about lizard people, Like we've actually had people murder people because they're lizard people. Like, okay, like, you know, it's it's kind of crazy like how hyper polarized that everything has gotten to the extent that I mean that's a crazy example obviously, but
Here's another crazy example. Justina Carrion says, so you want a Messiah to kill everyone and bring Israel to glory. If that's what you got from the intro, you're revealing yourself for who you are. Because the idea of Messiah in Judaism is nothing like that. You're literally taking this idea from doomsday Christian cults, which not even all Christians agree on what, the apocalypse. And again, here's another interesting thing. Apocalypse versus Armageddon. Armageddon means like this great war that's going to destroy everything. And then there's this idea of apocalypse. And apocalypse, in Hebrew, the word is ge'ulah, and it means like revealing. Mm-hmm. And there's this idea that the apocalypse or the revealing, the ge'ulah, is connected with the return from galut. So ge'ulah and galut are connected. and galut is exile. And again, it's not inherent, like it does refer to a physical exile, but it also refers to a spiritual one. And the idea, because there's not even 100% certainty within Judaism, like, who the Messiah will be, because the idea is it's like all this stuff is kind of like it'll come to pass, but it's not like you have this idea like, oh, this is, the Messiah. Because at the end of the day, and this is also another thing, if you understand, what is it, like Jews no longer being oppressed as being equivalent to the Messiah killing everyone, like that's just completely disconnected from reality. Like if you actually read what it says about the coming of the Messiah, there's this, what is this, nation shall not raise up sword against other nation, no longer shall they know war anymore. Like literally the understanding is that the Messiah cannot come until there is this peace. And it's not just some sort of peace, like it's like, oh well, because a lot of people, I've heard all these, nutty theories like, oh, so the Jews are going to try and like force peace upon people. It's like, what? You can't force peace. The whole point of peace is that it's something that has to come. It can't
Right.
be. Yeah.
It has to come naturally.
One of the things I was going to say here, Ariel, is I think any reading of the Bible, you have trouble putting it where the Messiah coming at the end times actually kills too many people himself. There's a lot of death, but that's from impact from wormwood and wars and all that stuff. It's like the Messiah doesn't do the killing. You know what I mean?
In the same way that given this is a different understanding in Christianity, but in Judaism, the Messiah isn't actually responsible for saving anyone or for redeeming anything. It's just a sign that God is.
Right. Yeah, and I'll also say, like in Christianity, like a lot of people have interpreted Revelation with like dispensational ideas, and that's not like Justina Carrion says here, like, yeah, some dispensationalists will believe that. Like, they're like, yeah, Christ is going to murder everybody or whatever. But the majority of it, like, if you actually read Revelation, majority of it is like calling people to repent, and they're causing their own like misery. So it's not really Christ that's causing the misery there. It's the it's them. It's them causing their own misery by not living like they're supposed to, I guess. And that's a totally foreign concept to some of the dispensationalists today, because they don't really, they might read the Bible, but they don't understand what's actually going on with it most of the time, because they don't understand context and all that. So
yeah. And so it's interesting. So Justina goes on, exactly, because we non-believers in murdering Jehovah will be dead. Duh. But again, you're looking at this from the way that, some fundamentalists view this. But the thing is, if you actually look between the lines, how do you understand that in order for basically for the Messiah to come, or for basically this restoration of the temple, that you also are going to have, and again, within Christianity, these things are already viewed as, similar, but basically the idea of the Holy Spirit as the mother, and you even have these references to the mother of Israel. But, and again, here's what you need to take into account. The Jewish God is a syncretization of a national God, Yahweh, with a universal God, El. So like El is El is more comparable to like Kronos, but even then it's like the idea of El Elyon within, and this is what I would argue, that this idea of God, or the highest God in Judaism, is actually more like that of Phanes. And given, it's kind of, this would be seen as, a heretical comparison, but basically Phanes is the was it two-faced God that like that splits itself in two in order to create the world. And what's interesting is that in Genesis, the word bara, because it's how's it like Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, because of how Hebrew works, bara could either be well, it's also because you could break it up as Beroshit bara, so it's not necessarily Bereshit bara. You can break it up and have spaces in different places, but basically, Yit bara could be like he separated the heavens from the earth. It could also be created, but it's this idea that in the separation there is this creation, and you even see it with Eve. She's created from the separation of Adam from Adam. And so, like, with that, even God is understood within this context. But the thing is that there isn't obviously you have people nowadays who are fundamentalists, and they're going to be like, oh, pagans are evil, they're going to burn in hell, or but again, like, even the idea of hell isn't native to Judaism. Like, it's something that is a Hellenistic import. Before that, you just had Sheol, and it's even written like in where is it? It's written in Ecclesiastes that everyone shares the same fate. It doesn't matter whether you did good or whether you did bad, you're going to the same place. And one thing that's interesting is that like, you can even look at like some of the more mystical understandings in Judaism, that basically this understanding of being destroyed, like, basically if you sin against God or whatever, that you're basically I might be rusty on this, but basically that you're just assimilated back into the entirety of God, almost like into the fullness, or like, again, it maybe even be comparable to this idea of like the pleroma. But one second, sorry, 1 second.
I was going to say, to tag in there, Ariel, some of what you're talking about kind of sounds like in the Hypsistorians that were around for a while there. Whereas, Zeus Hypstasis, the Most High, which is a lot like El Elyon, from a more of a Hellenistic standpoint. Pagan.
Mm-hmm. But let's see. So, what happens if you tell Jehovah that you hate him? I mean, I guess at the end of the day, that like, because there's people who don't even believe that Jehovah's real. There's people who believe that your understanding is a complete misrepresentation. And then, I mean, like, at the end of the day, what is but see, that's what I'm arguing against, that Judaism is a patriarchal take on the older traditions. And like, when people are incapable of seeing anything besides like the way that it gets, so like, here, this is actually a good example. So do you think that do you seriously think that any religion is innocent? Because I don't. Every religion is guilty of one thing or another. The thing is that it seems like you're trying to make Judaism into guilty because you're trying to view it. So let's see. It's interesting. You have Ahura Mazda as your profile picture. What are your thoughts on him? Because I'm sure I could start putting up how Zoroaster.
I was going to say, here's one point, Ariel. It's one thing if you're trying to say that Judaism is innocent. That's an argument that can be made. Now, if you're trying to say the Jews themselves are innocent, the Bible itself is evident of what a ridiculous claim that is. Right. It's all about how the Jews failed to follow Judaism and got punished for doing so.
I've read scholar. His name's Alan Segal, and he would actually say that too. What you just said about that, because I mean, it speaks a whole lot about hey, this is where we screwed up a whole lot. Maybe you shouldn't do like we did. Try to learn from our mistakes. Like that's kind of the gist of a lot of the Jewish text, anyways.
Exactly. It's a matter of, it's not that the rules are wrong. It's if you don't follow the right rules, you suffer.
So, and to answer your question, I didn't skip it. I was just talking about the other stuff. Though, here, you want to know why you see the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah as so unethical? Given it's not historical, because when it's supposed to have happened is way after the city was actually destroyed. So, again, this is narrative, but it's an ideology. So, I don't understand what you think I believe about it, but the thing is that, like, wait, so here, answer me this. Why do you think that Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed? Because, Jehovah's the one who's supposed to have done it, but do you know why he did it? I'll wait for your answer. And in the meantime, let's see, what was it that I was looking for? All right.
Well, I was going to say, while you're looking for that, Ariel, I think it's interesting to note that this is kind of right along the lines of what we're talking about, where this is that hyper-polarized environment that you're trying to discuss in.
Yeah, thanks for the example, Justina. So here, let's watch this. I mean, I think you've already seen Instagram, but I would like y'all's opinions on this, because how does this make any sense? And so Muslims don't even accept this tradition, which is interesting. But
וישלח אדוני בעם את הנחשים וינשכו וימת עם רב מישראל. ויאמר אדוני אל משה, עשה לך שרף ושים אותו על נס. והיה כל הנשוך וראה אותו וחי.
תרים לי קצת ואני אמשיך משם, ואל תגיע לבד.
אוקיי, שימו לב, חדשות טובות. חדשות טובות!
חדשות טובות?
חדשות טובות!
מה קרה?
משה פה מצא תרופה להקשת נחשים, וארגן לכל מי שנחש הקיש אותו פיצויים לכל החיים.
סתום את הפה, אל תתערב במה שלא זה. אין פיצויים, חבר'ה, אין פיצויים, זה טעות. יש תרופה. אלוהים שלח תרופה.
הלו, משה, מה קורה? קדימה, תתחיל לזוז, נו, תביא את התרופה, אנחנו מאבדים אותם.
הנה.
מה זה?
זה נחש מנחושת. אלוהים ביקש שאני אכין נחש מנחושת. אתם תסתכלו.
Actually, you're the one who's doing the nice dodge, because I know why, and I'm going to say why. Literally, going to bring it up after this. But the thing is, it seems like you don't actually know why. You must assume it's because you think that God hates gay people. That must be the reason, huh?
Ariel, that nice dodge is one of those projection things. They're saying what you're doing and describing your motivation rather than just watching what you're doing.
The prophet Ezekiel says why Sodom was destroyed, and it wasn't for sodomy. It was for.
But don't. Because I want to prove the point that they don't know. Where maybe they're looking it up right now.
Here's one I can go that's totally off track. If you're looking at that staff the same way I am, how are you not seeing basically one of those staff of Asclepius's? A healing staff from Greek one. It's not quite the caduceus with the double snake and wings, but it's definitely a staff of Asclepius.
Yeah, so just so you know, sodomy being named after Sodom, that's an English thing.
Yeah.
Like, if you're that's like one of the stupidest arguments I've ever heard.
Well, hold on, Ariel. The city was originally named Sodom back then, just so it could lend its name to the act in English millennia later. That's the sort of reasoning that I've heard people use before.
So I was actually talking to Neil about not about this, but he mentioned that, when he was a Christian at one point, one of the people like that he used to do streams with or whatever, they actually kind of took it from him, and I was like, it's an interesting way of looking at it, and it's the thing where I can see Neil saying it, like you can see how it's like his thought process, but if it were the other guy saying it, like it just comes off cringy because it's like anyway. But the point is, he was trying to argue that basically that English is the final frontier of language, and that all other languages are kind of like leading up to it. It was an interesting way of looking at it, but at the end of the day, obviously, it's not how reality works.
Well, I was going to say there's something about English being an amoeba, a gray goo. It just absorbs every language it comes into contact with. So, I have some sympathy to his point of view from that angle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Usal said, I was in the other room when I heard Here Comes the Jews, and you had to run in. So wait, so that so you had to come because the Jews are coming. So it's kind of like gotta. Anyway, and then Nachlashtun, the copper healing god. So yeah, this is interesting because there are arguments that it was being used basically. So here's the thing: there's actually even certain understandings of Yahweh as a serpent. So like, it kind of raises the question: is this supposed to be God?
Good question. Sort of the goes along with the idea of Yahweh as a dragon, where I go is like, maybe that was the whole Marduk's pet dragon being Yahweh.
Justina, it's literally so hilarious how, like, I know the reason. I'm literally going to go onto it after this. The fact that you can't wait probably indicates that you don't know.
No. This is an indication of more of that hyper-polarized one, where this is more projection. They're basically saying that you're not giving them the answer they want to hear, so therefore you can't answer it. You don't know, right? So, just sharing with you.
Yeah, and I bet you the moment that I say it, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I knew it all along," and there's going to be no way I can disprove them. I mean, besides the fact that it's pretty obvious.
Well, that's why I don't go with proof or disproof on stuff like that. That's why, lay the facts out there, let people to come to their conclusion. If they want to side against you, Ariel, that's their call. They can be wrong.
Okay, so hold on. You're trying to say that... Wait, so... What's that? Is that sodomia? Okay, so you're trying to say that's Hebrew? Really?
Do they take it as a loan word into Hebrew?
I mean, let's see. I'm going to look this up. So,
or did it go the other way? Was it something Hebrew that became Greek? I don't know.
A lot of times that is what happens. Is the Greek and the Hebrew they're going to say the same word for that,
So, Saddam. Huh.
But I was going to say one of the aspects of the current hyper-polarized things right now is that it's gone to a situation where people expect you to either be 100% with them or you're 100% against them. Sure. You're not allowed to agree with them on some points and then disagree with others. Because it's like I survived for decades on being able to discuss politics because I hate both parties. It's basically I find out which party do you hate, and we can dive in and just complain about how bad those guys are. But it's when it's switched to when I had to sit there and agree that your party was actually good and was some kind of answer rather than just a different problem. That's when I started having problems. And that probably happened, I'd say early 2000s. And I kind of tied it to, what I was hearing from some of my university professors, friends with critical theory, the rise of critical theory being taught, where basically it was presented to me as you have the choice of either oppressing or being oppressed. When I first heard that, it was like, what the hell? I don't want either of those options. Why can't we all just get along, sort of Rodney King-like? I'll tag out on that point.
Yeah, so... Justina, I'm not denying that sodomy is something that became a thing because of the Bible, but the thing is, it's not actually in the Bible. What is in the Bible is Sodom and Gomorrah. This act that you're calling sodomy is not. Now, it's possible there might be some parallel in Greek tradition, but I'm not denying that. But my point is this association of sodomy being something that's associated with gay people, that's an exclusive. Also, another thing, these things that are being said are prohibited. It's also possible that these are being specifically prohibited for the priesthood, not because they're being viewed as morally wrong, but because they're being viewed as a type of basically in a similar role as miasma. And again, I'm not saying that, it's justified or that, that's what we should be, believing in our modern world. But, and I will get to this, but you're just delaying me talking about what sodomy actually is by continuing to pester me on this. We'd already be done with this video by now if you hadn't, but we'll get to that.
לו לתוך העיניים, וזה ירפא אתכם ככה.
זה לא נראה כמו נחש.
מה זה, הבן שלי מפסל נחש יותר טוב מזה, והוא בלי גפיים עליונות. עלתה עליו כרכרה, גדי, אתה יודע, חתכה לו את כל ה...
סליחה באמת, גברת ציפי תומרקין. שכחתי שלמרות שאת מנגבת ביד, בכל מה שנוגע לאומנות ותרבות, יש לך סטנדרטים מאוד מחמירים. עם של קקות.
לא.
טוב, תקשיבו, אין לי זמן לכל השטויות האלה. כל מי שנשך אותו נחש, תעמדו בתור, סתכלו לו בעיניים ונרפאתם. הלאה, מי ראשון?
טוב.
טוב, מירי,
גדי, לך אתה ראשון.
טוב, אין מה להפסיד, נכון?
יאללה.
בוא, גדי.
בוא, גדי.
רגע, אני מבין מה קורה פה.
כן? מה קורה פה, גדי?
זה מבחן! אלוהים מעמיד אותנו בניסיון! הוא רוצה לבדוק אם אנחנו נאמין שהנחש הזה ירפא אותנו. ואם נאמין בנחש, הוא יהרוג אותנו. נו, הבנו, סבבה, יופי, עברנו את הבחינה. קדימה, תמצוץ לחבר'ה את ההרס ותמרח עלינו סביור.
לא.
מה לא? יאללה, משה, תמצוץ לו, אנשים מתים פה.
תמצוץ לו.
מה?
תמצוץ לו.
תמצוץ לו!
גם ביד,
תמצוץ לו.
מה אתה מעודד אותה? סתמו את הפה, שקט, סתמו את הפה. אני לא מוצץ כלום לאף אחד. אין פה שום ניסיון ושום מבחן. זה נחש פלאים מנחושת, בסדר? אתם תסתכלו לו בעיניים ונמשיך לכנען, נו כבר. יאללה.
סליחה רגע, אני חושבת שגדי צודק.
או.
זה כן מבחן.
בטח.
כי הרי כתוב לא תעשה לך פסל וכל תמונה בספר עם המחשוף.
קוראים לזה לוחות הברית, גברת, הרגע קיבלת את זה.
בסדר, אני כל המסע הייתי במאחור של בני ישראל, זה טלפון שבוע עד שזה מגיע אליי. אני לא בטח, אני עד לפני רגע חשבתי קוראים לך לאוניד ואתה נדפקת מהשבץ.
אתה רואה?
מה?
So it's interesting, though. They're bringing up this idea that, we shouldn't be doing this because God said, don't worship or make for yourself any graven image of, anything that's in the heavens above or on the earth below. And yet, God's telling them, look to this and you will be healed.
It's a question of which of God's laws do you want to break?
One second. I'm not blocking your messages. It's possible that it got auto blocked by YouTube. That's something that I only realized when I was made a mod on Neil's channel, that there's a bunch of stuff that get maybe
links don't get shown either. Yeah.
What does Leviticus 20:13 say? Just please look it up. No, but don't leave because if you're just there's I'm trying to actually show you something, but let's see, Leviticus 20:13. I have a feeling I know what this is, and if it is, I have a response to this. And the thing is that basically, I'm not arguing that these ideas have. I'm not saying they haven't been used to horribly oppress people. I'm simply saying that if you read them that way, you're literally following what the fundamentalists say. And again, I don't think that we should, do apologetics for fundamentalists. What we should do is apologetics for what is actually in the text. But let's see. So Leviticus 20:13. Okay, so let's see. Yep, this is what I thought. So the ish asher yishkav et zachar, and a man that lies et zachar with a male. Notice that. A man that it doesn't say a man that lies with a man that lies with a male. Mishkave isha, as he lies with a female, or sorry, no, this word isha is woman, not female. So look at this. So a man who lays with a male as he does with a woman, not as a male as he does with a female, and it's not a male who lies with a male as he does with a woman. It's important to see how, again, the way that it's been understood in Judaism, I'm not apologizing for that. I'm telling you what the text actually says. Like seriously, this word zachar, we can look at the way, look at this. let's see, in the context of male of humans and animals. Doesn't specify, or like it changes. Okay, this is remembering. Okay, male. So here we have from Assyrian Zikaru, obscure. Male is mentioned, talked of. Let's see, be sharp. It's it literally refers to the basically to the penis. Like that's here male organ. And let's see. It's used for men, male persons of all ages. In the context of judges, kings, but let's see. So yeah, I mean, some people definitely could argue. Okay, some people definitely argue that it's referring to anyone who's male, but the thing is that there is a context in which it is being used to refer to essentially male children. And again, yeah, you're going to see that as an apologetic. I don't expect you not to, because, let's see. Okay, here, yeah, I'll translate the entire verse. The Isha Sher Yishkav, and a man that lies with, wait. The Isha Sher Yishkav, hold on, no, where is it? Oh, yeah. The Isha Sher, so it's also interesting, you see it says, and if a man lie with mankind. They translated that because it's not if a man lies with a man, it's if a man lies with male, or if a man lies with a male. And again, the fact that it changes and it's referring to as with a woman, which here you have Ish and Isha, which are directly parallel, and then the thing that isn't parallel is Zachar. It's also important to note it doesn't say that and again, I don't think that this is moral, but there's no prohibition against a man lying with a nekeva, and again, this is partly because at this point in time there was marriage of older men to younger women, and I'm not justifying that. Okay, so yeah, you're saying I'm dishonest because Yeladim is children. Yeah, I know Ish isn't children. That's literally what I just said. The word that I was saying can be used for children is Zachar and Nekeva, because it's kind of like when your child is born, you have to figure out, and again, things are a bit different now, but basically, are they male or are they female? And the context is, because when they're born, they're not wearing anything. And you're able to see, are they male or are they female? The thing is that there's these prohibitions, and the thing is, it's also important to look that Leviticus is, in all honesty, probably a Hellenistic text, and that pederasty was something common in the Hellenistic world, but that was being condemned in the Jewish world. Oh, yeah, I haven't read the verse. Let's see, can you just read the verse without going one and having to stop and make excuses? Maybe if you would stop commenting, I'd be able to. So, the Ish Asher Yishkav et Zachar, and a man that lies with a male, Mishkaveh Isha, as he does with a woman, Toeva, it is an abomination. Asu Shenehem, let's see, the two of them shall be put or made like to death. Mot yumato damehem, their blood will be upon them. So yeah, I'm not defending this, but the thing is, you also have to keep in mind that there's this one tradition that even the most strict court, that if they executed someone, like more than one person every 70 years, I literally just said that. Are you that ignorant? I said that's what it says, and that I don't support that. And again,
relax, Ariel. It seems like they're trying to go out of their way to trigger you and misunderstand you.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, they're trying to egg you on here.
You know how you've advised me of that at times?
Mm-hmm.
I'm returning the favor.
Have a good one then, Justina.
So what the hell are you talking about?
לא, אין פה שום פסל ושום תמונה, זה תרופה.
רגע, אני רוצה להבין. למה נחש מנחושת זה לא פסל, ועגל מזהב זה כן?
הופה, הביא לך.
כי מה, איזו שאלה, זה משהו אחר. מה, זה עגל וזה נחש, זה שונה לגמרי.
למה זה אותו דבר? הרי גם הנחש זה סימבול מוחשי לאלוהות האבסטרקטית.
אבסטרקטית, הופה, למדת מילה גברת, אני רואה שלומדים הרבה דברים שם במאחורה.
טוב, בסדר, אז איך נדע מה זה עבודת אלילים ומה לא?
מה הבעיה, ציפי? בשביל זה אני פה, תשאלו אותי.
יאללה, תשאלו.
נניח יש לי שיפודיה, ואני רוצה לשים תמונה של רב צדיק מעל החמוצים. עובר?
לא, ממש לא עובר, זה עבודת אלילים.
וציור שמן?
לא.
אם זה מעל הפיתות?
גם לא.
חוט כזה אדום נגד עין הרע?
עבודת אלילים.
ומה עם קדושים?
עבודת אלילים.
קמע.
חמסה?
קעקוע על כל הגב וקבה נודרת, מלשינים דוקרת.
אחוז שרמוטה עבודת אלילים.
אז כל אלה זה עבודת אלילים, ונחש מנחושת לא? למה?
לא יודע למה, גדי, לא יודע למה. הוא לא משתף אותי בהחלטות שלו, נו, מה אתה רוצה ממני? כנראה שאפילו הוא בעצמו לא מאמין שאנחנו יכולים להאמין באל בלתי נראה, אז הוא אמר לי להכין לכם נחש.
אני לא סומכת עליך, לאוניד, אחרי שאני שמעתי עליך ששלפת את המשמו הזה שלך, הכית איתו בסלע בשביל בקבוק קולה, תעשה לי טובה.
את עוברת קדימה.
תגיד, משה, אתה בוודאות יודע שהנחש הזה זה עובד?
עובד, לפחות כמו מים קדושים, חוט אדום, ולהגיד מכוער על תינוק יפה.
יאללה.
טוב, נו, אז אני ראשון.
יאללה,
יפה, תודה רבה, גדי, בוא, תתקרב אליי. יפה. עכשיו זה הנחש.
תסתכל לו טוב טוב בעיניים.
תתרכז, תסתכל לתוך העיניים של הנחש, ותתרכז.
האמת, בהתחלה הייתי סקפטי, אבל...
הבא בתור.
I like those. Those are pretty funny.
It is a good point, though, because God's telling them, make no graven images, and then he tells them, make a graven image.
Well, can I interject a little bit with that? Because it says not to make idols, but it doesn't say that you can't make like icons. So there's a difference between holy and unholy images. So like you'll see like when they put the temple together, you know, he tells them like all sorts of stuff to put in with them. You know, like I want you to make this image of a seraphim. I want you to put this on the temple. You know, like it's images. So like, you know, so like
to follow up on Lance, like the when they built the Ark of the Covenant, you're putting the images of the angels on the top of the ark.
So
Right.
there's only one problem with this. Lo ta'aseh lecha, do not make for yourselves hesel, an idol or an image, likeness of man or animal. So it doesn't have to be something that's literally worshipped. The kol tmuna, and any picture, any image, asher bashamayim, or like any likeness of that which is bashamayim in the heavens, mima'al, from above, the asher ba'aretz mitalchat, and upon the earth below. The asher b'mayim mitachat la'aretz, and that is in the water below the earth. So it's so it says you shall not make any of them for yourself, and you shall also not bow down to them or serve them.
right, but they're not really technically they're not serving in that scripture. They're serving Yahweh in the scripture, like in that scripture. He's just using something else like to bring about his gift to them if they will follow him. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
I mean, yeah, but the thing is, it's very clear. You are not to make for yourself any image of anything that is in the heavens above or the earth below.
So
Right.
it's basically you're saying that that's similar to like the Islamic prohibition against basically figural art.
Yeah, like for instance, why was the golden calf bad, but this isn't? So the implication is it's because the golden calf is being viewed as this is God, but that's not what the snake is being viewed as. Even though there is a good chance that there actually is this representation that's being done with the snake, like basically that the snake is being used to depict God, because Like, are you familiar with the whole theory that that basically some of the dragon-like imagery associated with Yahweh?
Right. But also like I'm thinking at least in my I'm thinking like the divine council kind of stuff, where it's um like Yahweh Yahweh is the supreme God according to the Hebrew scriptures, and then these other gods, they get worshipped as false gods, but they still have to serve him if he demands it. You know what I mean? So even if I give you the even if I play devil's advocate and go, hey, yeah, maybe that was like a another god or something. Like, well, Yahweh still would use that false god to do his bidding too. You know what I mean? Like, even if I go with that line of thought, I mean, because I don't necessarily think that it's a false. I don't necessarily think that it's another god or anything. But I mean, if I go with that line of thought, I can still reason through it with the divine council stuff. So just that's just my thoughts, anyways.
And I was going to say, my weighing in on how to resolve the issue here is my multi-level interpretation, where it's like you have one narrative that had the bronze snake in it, but didn't have the golden calf, and then you had one with the golden calf, but didn't have the bronze snake. And when they went and did their final editing, they merged the two together, and they couldn't really, resolve the contradiction. So they just sort of put it in there and said, let them figure it out later. Tagging.
Yeah, I mean, I lost my train of thought there, but like, I think of a lot of like, just, I lost my train of thought again. Never mind. I'll just shut up now.
Just give it a second, Lance. Another train of thought will be around in just a minute.
Yeah, and then I'll probably forget it as well, but it's cool.
Muted if you're trying to talk, Ariel.
But yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry. Let's see. One second.
The other thing I do in these situations is I'll often take the zeroth commandment that I sort of like applied the robotic laws, where they came up with the zeroth law of robotics, and applied to the 10 commandments, where it's like zeroth commandment becomes do as God says, not as God does.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because so often in the Bible, it doesn't look like God's living by the same rules he gave everybody else to go by.
One second. All right, so let's see. Right. So now I don't know if they're still here, but to address the whole thing with Sodom, because this is something that, like, it's kind of interesting by making it that you have this both in primarily gets reflected onto Judaism because of Christianity, but basically, like, if you were to have a word for sodomy in Hebrew, it would not mean what it means in English, and that's explicitly clear, because if you read the text based on what's there and not what people say about it, it's very clear that it's not saying that gay people are bad.
Right.
Yeah? Oh, were you going to say something?
I mean, like, I can say it, right? I can say what the sin is.
Well,
like this, or never mind.
Well, I mean, like, we could talk about, we're about to get to the point, it's like made very clear.
Oh, okay, you go ahead.
דמיינו סיטואציה. אתם בבית, יום חם, אתם בפנים עם המשפחה, פתאום דפיקה בדלת. שלום.
שלום לכם.
אנחנו באמת מתנצלים על ההטרדה, פשוט תהינו אם נוכל להתארח אצלך כאן. אנחנו פה תקועים בחוץ
אתם לבד?
כן.
בחוץ?
כן.
בשכונה הזאת? בואו,
רבה לך, תודה,
איזה יופי, רבותיי, כזאת הכנסת אורחים, מה תגידו, צדיק הלוט הזה או לא צדיק? אבל רגע, המבחן עוד לא נגמר, בואו נראה מה יקרה כשיבואו אליו עוד כמה אורחים מפתיעים.
שלום.
טוב, אתה יודע איך זה הולך. קדימה, תוציא את האורחים שלך, אנחנו רוצים לאנוס אותם.
לא, אבל אני...
אין אבל! אתה לא מכיר את החוקים, זקנצ'יק. אם אתה הולך לאנוס מישהו בעיר הזאת, 30% מהאונס בא אלינו.
כן, זה אני יודע, אבל אני לא הולך לאנוס אותם.
באמת?
כן, להתראות.
טוב, אז מישהו צריך לאנוס אותם. קדימה, החוצה.
איזו תפנית בעלילה, רבותיי, נראה שהדילמות פשוט לא נגמרות עבור הזקן החביב שלנו, ועכשיו נשאלת השאלה, יוציא אותם לאנס או לא יוציא אותם לאנס?
So yeah, Lance, you can pop the balloon now.
Hospitality. It was hospitality, and they were not just righteous people. Like, that's what most of it's about. They weren't hospitable to anybody. They were just, yeah, like Ezekiel 16 says it. Like, it tells you what the actual sin of sodomy, or not sodomy, sorry. It tells you what the actual sin of Sodom was, and it's just because, like, they were not hospitable to people. Like you wouldn't go to a town and then like getting raped. Like, people, that'd be messed up, right? You know, like, and the Hebrew thing's pretty clear that that's not a good thing, you know. Like, that's what it's saying. Like, they're not being hospitable, and Lot is the only one that's hospitable to them. He messes up too, in a way, because of his daughters, but he does try to be hospitable to these people that he clearly, he's trying to be friendly with, and that's the sin of Sodom. Like, that's one of the big things about Sodom, why they're condemned, and yeah. So, anyways.
Yeah, and like, it's pretty clear, because if it were about the fact that, apparently some people are just, they just buy this thing that, oh, well, it must be that the whole town of Sodom was gay. Well, first of all, that doesn't make sense. But second of all,
right.
Like, they literally raped Lot's daughters. So, like, it's not a matter of being gay. It's a matter of being rapists.
Right. And it says right here, Ezekiel 16:49, it says, "Behold, this was the guilt of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters had pride, excess of food, prosperous ease, but they did not aid the poor and needy. They were haughty, and they did an abomination before me. So I removed them when I saw this." And I'll give context. Ezekiel's talking about, he's naming Jerusalem as Sodom in this case, but he's condemning Jerusalem here. But this tells you what Sodom's sin was, because Ezekiel's talking through God here. So, yeah, I mean, he even says Samaria has not committed half of your sins. You've committed more abominations than they did, and have made your sisters appear righteous by all the abominations you've committed. Like, dang, that's some harsh stuff there. But and yeah, so it's interesting, right?
Yeah, especially because, so it's kind of interesting because after this, Lot ends up, escaping with his two daughters, because the wife looks back and she gets turned into salt. And so his daughter, and again, like, the way that the narrative's written, it's kind of suspect. Like, how would he not know they were his daughters? And even if he was really drunk, but skipping over that fact, from that disgusting union, you have the nations, and again, this is an Israelite tradition of how they come about. Like, to look at this as objective history would be kind of missing the point that this is a cultural ideology for another culture. But basically, that the Ammonites and the Moabites, that they're essentially children born from incest.
Right.
Which is, I mean, it's also kind of ironic, because Abraham and Sarah are literally half siblings, and that's not ever even considered to be an issue. Given it's like I think it's equally as disgusting regardless of whether it's Abraham and Sarah or Lot and his daughters. But the point is, you can see how it's not applied equally to criticism.
Right.
But yeah, so let's see.
בתי הבתולה. קחו אותה.
בסדר. צ'ופ צ'ופ צ'ופ. תשמע, אנחנו נאנוס את בתך הבתולה, אבל אנחנו עדיין רוצים את שני הבחורים האלה שם. קדימה!
נראה שהזקן שלנו קצת נלחץ לפינה.
זאת הבכורה. הרבה יותר מנוסה.
טוב, קדימה, נו. בסדר, אנחנו נאנוס גם את הגדולה. אבל זה לא פותר אותך משני החבר'ה האלה שם. זה בשבילך. נו. איש מתוקי שחור כזה חמודי. או, השונטה. איזה ליידי.
זאת שלי.
זאת שלך.
טוב, רבותיי, נראה לי שכבר עבדנו מספיק על הזקן החביב. הגיע הזמן שאכיר אותו באופן אישי. לוטי, חביבי, אל תבכה, אתה היית בסדר גמור, חביבי.
רגע, זה אתה מהתוכנית הזאת.
וגם שני האורחים שלך הם בסך הכל שחקנים.
גם הם? אני לא מאמין. שמדו עליי. אוי, זה הקלה עם כל הסיפור הזה של האונס.
לא, האונס בכלל לא קשור אלינו.
ואנחנו עדיין רוצים לאנוס אותם. אתה משגע אותי, אתה מטריף אותי. אני רוצה לאכול אותך.
אז יש לי הצעה בשבילך.
כן.
לא, רבותיי, אני לא בעניין, אני רק צופה.
תעשה סיבוב.
אני לא...
תסתובב, חמודי, תסתובב, אל תתבייש.
אני לא קשור, אני לא...
אני אוהב את מה שאני רואה.
מה?
בוא, יאללה.
רגע, לא.
טוב.
הרים בעדינות.
אחלה.
תודה רבה.
אחלה.
זה לא הפעם האחרונה שראית אותי.
שחקנים, אנחנו, תירגע.
Yeah, like I think it really does a good job of, kind of, like, obviously, yeah, it's still a horrible story. It doesn't make it any better, but it's important to point out that this understanding that it's referring to gay people, that's not what it is in Judaism. That's never what it's been in Judaism. And, if that's what you, like, if you want to say, oh, look how evil Jehovah is because he killed gay people for being gay, it's like, well, criticize him for what he does do, not what he doesn't do. Criticize him for, destroying a whole town if that's what you want to do. But it wasn't because the people were gay.
Right. Yeah, I definitely, there's a book called Sinning in the Hebrew Bible by Alan Segal. He's a Jewish scholar, and I mean, if anybody's interested, that's a good book. I really enjoyed it anyways. So he gives some really interesting points.
So, I guess that, this was kind of an example from, my experience, but do you have any examples of like things that, are like relatively super uncontroversial, but just saying them, there's people who like, they see it as like, oh, how dare you, even though it's like literally in some cases doctrinal.
I gotta think on that. I know, like on abortion, right? Like people get really upset sometimes when like me, I vote pro-choice policies for a lot of the time, right? And it's not because I'm like out to like abort children or something, right? I support, like, if I can get someone to not do an abortion, I'm like awesome, because I am pro-life. Like in that sense. Like I'm going to be like, yeah, you should try not to, you don't need to abort your child, right? But I also push for like policies that I know that's going to put the abortion rate down, right? And people think that this is controversial, and I'm like, I'm talking to pro-life people, and I'm like, guys, I agree with you. Like, I want to save babies. I want to do all that, like you guys do, but the way that your policies that you want to do these policies, it's not going to help them. Like, you're just going to impoverish people. They're gonna feel like pressured to go get an abortion. They're gonna feel like they have to because they can't afford a child, and because of these policies that are impacting them. Just all sorts of stuff like that. And like, okay, like if you're pro-life, you should. I don't know why it's controversial to do that, except that people have taken like, you know, taken some of these like points that the media has told them to say. Like they haven't really thought it through. Like, well, if I care about babies, then I should put my tax money to like help pay for their medical and all of this other stuff. Like I kind of think of that when you ask me controversial opinions. So, because I do get that a lot where I'm like, I'm called a baby killer, all this other stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I don't see it that way. If anything, I think I'm trying to prevent more abortions. So
it's kind of interesting because for my class, I literally am just very vaguely, like very little familiarity with this, but do you know about the story of Perpetua?
Is it you're talking Paul and Perpetua or?
No, in Carthage.
I think I gotta Google it, but I think.
So, like, the reason I bring it up is because you can see that basically how some early Christians were viewing motherhood and birthing, and it just is completely different. Let me see if I can find something.
Right.
So basically, she martyred herself. Like she was given she could have chosen to, and like it was the contention wasn't even that she was Christian. It was that she wasn't honoring the emperor.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm reading it now, and I had to figure out which Perpetua you're talking about because there's a lot of Perpetuas in Orthodoxy. So, but yeah, I got you now.
Let's see. So
yeah, because she was pregnant and she got martyred because we also do it with her baby too or whatever. Like we honor her baby too because they were both martyred together.
I don't think her baby was.
I think if it's the one that I'm thinking of, then it was. But
no, she gave it to her family, to her father.
Oh, okay. I see. I might be wrong. I've got so many. Yeah, there's so many saint stories that it's like lots of them can just go together.
So here, hopefully this is good.
On the outskirts of Carthage, one of the largest ports in the Roman Empire, a group of Christians meet in secret. Private houses double up as churches.
Early Christianity was a religious movement for the extremely poor, for the slaves, and for men and women. Basically, anyone who didn't have a voice in Roman society could find a voice in the Christian movement.
Oh, how the turns have taken
across the empire.
Absolutely.
That is just so wild. Like it literally got flipped on its head.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, it's unfortunate because a lot of times now it's like, yeah, it's been flipped on its head, and it's up to people like me to try to be like, hey guys, like these are the oppressed people. Let's you know, let's treat them like we wanted to be treated back when we were the early church. You know what I mean?
And that's the thing that really just boggles my mind. Like at the end of the day, no one's saying that anyone has to be Christian. I mean, I'm literally a Jew, but the thing is that when people argue that that Christians are the most immoral people, like certain Christians are definitely, but the thing, like, and I mean, some people would say that I'm, just doing apologetics for Christianity, but the truth is that, like, the Christianity that's like alive and well today is, I mean, it has connections to, but is very disconnected from, this original Christianity that was, basically this religion of the oppressed, of the underdog, of the meek and the poor. Like, the the fact is that people want to judge Christianity by its like Hellenistic and Roman cover rather than looking at its context within Judea.
Right.
And I mean, I think you even have similar positions that people will take on what was it like? Dang it, I lost my train of thought, but yeah, let's continue.
8 million people are slaves with no rights in Roman law. 30 million are women who can't vote or hold public office. Among them, Perpetua, 22 years old, a new mother, and a subversive. A year earlier, an imperial decree made conversion to Christianity illegal. Converts like Perpetua are now enemies of the state. Their crime, refusing to honor the Roman gods.
You had to be a little bit crazy to be a Christian. It was enough to get you killed.
And like, see, here's the thing that I don't get. People, they're looking at Christian, and again, yeah, there is a lot of persecution that happens from Christians today. But the thing is that originally Christians were being persecuted. I mean, part of it was because they were viewed as this basically they were viewed as a Jewish sect that didn't even follow Judaism, and the only reason that the Jews were tolerated was because their religion was old enough that the Romans were like, well, it's ancient, so we have to respect it, even if we don't agree with it or understand it. But the thing is, once you get Christianity, it's like, oh, well, they walked out of their hedge of protection, and so now we can go after them because they don't worship our gods. And at the end of the day, it seems so bizarre to me. And ultimately, that gets morphed into Christian persecution of Jews because everything that was happening to the Christians beforehand gets reimposed onto Jews by now Christian Rome.
Right, that's true. Yeah, it does happen, unfortunately, on the historical front. Yep.
But and I think that's the thing. At the end of the day, you don't have to agree with or approve of or justify the past in order to understand it. But if you're just going to argue that we shouldn't even, talk about certain things because, oh, that's not what they are today, it's like, well, aren't you interested in finding out why Christianity has been turned into a tool of oppression? At the end of the day, and again, I think that, just because something has been turned into something, it doesn't mean that's all that it is. In the same way that, just because, for instance, I honestly think that without Judaism, these older traditions that it links back to, we just wouldn't be able to show this chain of connection between things. At the end of the day, I personally think it would be better if the older traditions would have survived. That way, if people want to be Jewish or they want to be Christian, then they're truly choosing because that's what they want to do instead of just because it's the flavor of the month or, flavor of their lifetime, essentially. And I think that's also one of the reasons why I personally think that religion does best in secular, in secularity, because of the fact that it truly means that the people who are joining because they want to be there, as opposed to just because it's what they need to do.
That, and like, if you don't have, because okay, power always corrupts. Like it just does, you know. So like if the church has less power, it gives you more incentive to not be a power hungry madman. You know what I mean? Like, and honestly, like, a lot of the people that do get in power, they end up distorting it to where it's just not even close to what, like, imagine Marjorie Taylor Greene in power. She would be like, I read the Bible and and you're like, okay, that's not even close to what like Christianity teaches. Like, what, you know, it's just some bizarre like rambling rant from a Georgia woman, you know.
So you brought up a really interesting point. You said that, and I mean, I agree with this. Absolute power, and even so, absolute power corrupts absolutely, but power corrupts.
Yeah.
Let me tag in here, Ariel, because I at the very least would like to correct the Montesquieu quote. It's that power tends to corrupt,
True.
and absolute power tends to corrupt absolutely. That's technically the right quote.
True.
And some of what you're saying here, it stands out from my old guy Sesame Street, sensibility here. Is a lot of what you're talking about boils down to applied critical theory, where it's the choice between oppressor and oppressed. And which do you want to be? Do you want to be the oppressor, or do you just want to be oppressed? And all of them fail to recognize the Hegelian synthesis that Lance is talking about, where we're all human, we should all get along. And I'd like to throw out my totally non-religious example of how I got outgrouped. And I think you've heard this one before, Ariel. But Lance hasn't. It's the when I was with a bunch of friends who we all loved you too. Now with that group, they're probably about 10 years younger than me or so, and I followed U2 back from the early MTV days, Sunday Bloody Sunday, and saw Unforgettable Fire when Bono had his arm in the cast. But when Poptopia came out, I didn't like the album as much. I appreciated they kind of did a David Bowie and got experimental, but a good third of Bowie's efforts just didn't click for me. And this one didn't click for me for U2. But they loved this one. Every album U2 came out with was the best. And how could I not see this one as the best? Right. And it was like, because I just didn't worship U2 enough, I basically lost friendships that way. Dang. So, and I'm going to tag out here and see what you guys have to say.
No, it's a good example. I mean, I've kind of had similar. I've seen similar happen too. People start to think a little differently, and then they question stuff, and then everyone's like, "Oh my gosh!" And then they get like a cult mentality. So, which it makes sense because everybody in some aspect does have a tribalistic mindset on something. Like, I bet if I grilled both of you just long enough, we could find something that y'all would be like, no, I am going to accept that no matter what. And it's part of your tribe, So, yeah.
One of the things that's interesting for me is I recognize my tribe is Tribe Truth.
Oh boy.
Yeah, no, that gets me in all sorts of trouble. You can recognize that one, Lance.
Yeah, I like it though. I like it. It was like, yeah, well, my tribe's the right one. Like, okay.
No. I'm often wrong. When I'm wrong, I'm against myself and my own tribe. I need to get back into line with truth.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's almost like I forget who. Maybe I don't remember who showed me this or who told me to. I think it was Kara, but the here there thing. It's kind of like, if you're like if you can do something that makes you outside of your own, like that, it's almost like it's this type of like self, like what, like I don't know even how to explain it, but it's almost like how in the process of going there, you actually end up here because it's impossible to end up there.
Nope, you got it exactly right. It's kind of an antinomic inversion process. Yep.
So, what was it that I was going to say? Oh, right, that, dang it, I completely lost my train of thought. But, yeah.
I was going to cycle it back around to Lance's original complaint about the people. One of the things I was seeing there is this all or none sort of thing. As soon as they realize you're not part of their group, now you're part of that group, which is everything that they hate, regardless of whether you actually agree with it or not.
Right.
It's sort of like all they're looking for is that one sign that you're not with them. Now they know they have free range to just shoot at you at will.
Right, exactly.
Tag out.
Yeah. So I remember what I was going to say. So it's like I'm one of very few people like around me that still is taking like COVID seriously. And I mean, the main reason why I am is because it, basically ruined my life. And like, I'm just trying to, preserve what I have. And so like, it's honestly really bizarre because like, regardless of what someone thinks about COVID, it seems like everyone just thinks that it's gone. And like, at the end of the day, I'd rather be, more cautious than not because I'd rather be, I'd rather be the crazy person who's still taking precautions than be the person who's comfortable just, getting sick because everyone else is okay. And it's kind of like that whole thing. If all your friends jumped off a bridge, would you? And I guess my answer, even though, everyone says that it's no, like, I was never like 100% sure of that because I definitely like I go with the crowd in a lot of things, but at the same time, if something's just so blatantly against what I know is true, it's like I'm not going to do it.
Right. It's thinking critically for yourself.
I was going to say some of mine, I'm stuck into that with my autism. It's like the story I shared with Ariel. It's what I called my Beauty and the Beast scenario, where I'm the guy who's left holding my torch in the village square saying, why is it that we want to kill the beast? What did he do that was wrong? When everybody else is halfway to the castle.
That's how you end up getting tied to the pyre alongside the beast.
Or like everybody blaming the monster in Frankenstein, and then you're like, well, how did he get created in the first place? And you're looking at Dr. Victor Frankenstein, and you're like, hey, what's going on here? And then he's like, oh, nothing at all.
That's why I was going to say that's why I'm so appreciative of Mel Brooks. Mel Brooks was able to turn that on its head with just a different pronunciation of Frankenstein, Frankenstein.
I love that guy. His movies, like, I love them so much.
One of the few good Mels in Hollywood.
Oh, I enjoy them.
But what was it? So actually, kind of on that note, because this is really connected. So I guess I'll just ask a few questions to get there. But who is Lucifer?
So that is a complicated question, my friend. No, it can be complicated. So I have right here the Old Testament pseudepigraphia, and there's another one right there too, and it makes it like this big monster. Oof. Yeah, it's like all these books. But
is that like Jasher and stuff?
Yeah, it's got like everything in it, pretty much.
Cool.
Yeah. James Charlesworth. Yeah, James Charlesworth. He's like, if you want to learn Second Temple Judaism, he's your go-to. Like, so Satan, Lucifer actually, I would say Lucifer does not actually. It's just something that got added later, but what people are really wanting is like, who is Satan? And you can argue that like there's a bunch of demons that get kind of coalesced together with like Satan and Belial, for example. Now you can also make arguments against that too. You can make arguments like well, Satan is the leader and the others are with him, And so when you're thinking of Satan, sometimes it's like a conglomeration of all of them. So yeah, there's all sorts of good arguments, but yeah, Lucifer is more of I think it's more of a name for Venus actually, like and it's like the bearer of light, and it's I think I might be wrong on this, but it comes more from, like in Isaiah, they've got the bearer of light, and they named it Lucifer in, like, I think it's Isaiah, and it never talks about Satan there. It's just talking about I think it's like King Nebuchadnezzar's like rise to power, like that he's a glorious king because he's a powerful, strong man. But yeah, Lucifer, bearer of light. Yeah.
So here's a few interesting things that I found. So, and again, like it's entirely possible that this parallel is essentially a like a inversion. So it's not saying that the parallel means that they're like equal or that they're similar, like similar in like. So it's not saying that like if one, but I guess here's my point. Do you consider like if you were to assign Satan on a like how there's like a D&D like moral alignment chart?
Yeah, like a hierarchy.
Like you have like chaotic, and then you have good, evil, and I think like light, dark, it's chaotic, like how you have chaotic good, chaotic equal, chaotic neutral, and then you have order good, or like good order, bad, so on and so forth. Where would you put Satan?
So for Judaism, I would put him at chaotic, but maybe not to the extent that Christianity will put it at chaotic. Like maybe on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the worst, like Judaism would be 3 for Satan, and then for Christianity goes to like level 5 because it starts to put like in the book of Revelation, there's like all these parts in there where it's talking about Emperor Domitian, and he has declared himself the god. Like he's declared himself Jupiter and declared himself Zeus. And
I'll be right back, but continue.
Yeah, so he's declared himself Jupiter and Zeus, and the big problem there is like obviously Jesus to the Christians is God. So yeah, like I'm losing my train of thought now, but
I can help you a little bit. A lot of the beginning of Revelations is making fun of Domitian and his declaring him, all of the pretense with the people following him around, proclaiming how great he is, and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and when it says the temple of Satan, right? When it says that there like actually at that church there was a big giant hill in that city, and on top of it was the temple of Zeus. So when they say the temple of Satan, they're just saying that the person behind Domitian is Satan, like the spirit behind him is Satan. So like he's not actually the one in charge. The emperor's not in charge. It's Satan. It's Satan's in charge of him, So
yeah, you're talking the temple of Zeus at Baalbek, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's in a museum now, but it was on top of like what city was it? I should know this. It was on Pergamum. That's it. Pretty sure it was Pergamum. Yeah. So
yeah.
Yeah.
No, it had a big harbor that was, you had the glorious entrance into the city and the walkway up into the temple. Oh no, it's a big procession sort of thing.
Oh yeah, and the saints of the church say that Saint Antipas was sacrificed there, like they put him in a bronze bull, So
I was going to say I was going to serve up a bowl of my my gumbo interpretations, and I would go with Usal there. That I would go with the Satan of the Hebrew Bible as being lawful neutral. He's basically He's basically the official prosecutor of God.
Right.
He's just following the law.
Him and Samael are very like, because like the Apocalypse of Moses, like Samael does kind of the same thing as Satan does, right? And yeah, like if you read like the first like the oldest of the Hebrew texts, yeah, I would agree, lawful neutral for sure. And then like maybe you get further into it, then it becomes a little more like level 3 chaos, you know, and then you get like to the Christians, and then it's like level 5 where they're like, oh no, he's like he's loco, you know.
Yeah, and so, it's. I was going to say, if you can go, Ariel, or go ahead, Ariel. I'll do my gumbo later.
Oh yeah, so I mean, I think what's kind of interesting is, so if we understand that, and this is a tricky thing. Most people aren't going to be able to recognize this because, say they're Christian, they probably view Satan as evil, and then they would view so they would view Satan as evil and Jesus as good, right?
Right.
Now, what happens with Jews? Jews don't view Satan as evil. It's more so like it's like I mean, it's also not really something that's understood as like, you know, like an actual personality. It's more so like the Yetzer Hara, or like the evil inclination. It's kind of like that, or whatever is responsible for causing you to, the
best term that I heard for it, Ariel, label is the adversary.
Well, so I mean that's literally what Hasatan means, but I guess the point that I'm trying to make though is that it where was I going with this? Basically, so Satan isn't understood as evil within Judaism. It's just understood as this like necessary, you know, like you said, opposition or adversary, or not adversary, but you know, like counterbalance, basically to like the good. But the thing is, you can't have the good without having the bad. And the thing is, there's this understood that even within the bad, there's good within it. It's just about, so for instance, there it's understood that like sex is something that comes from the Yetzer Hara. But that doesn't mean that sex is bad. It just means that you should be having sex properly. And so
right.
But like, so within this idea, so Satan is roughly neutral, kind of like Usala and Graham were saying. But then what about Jesus? Well, traditionally, Jesus is viewed very negatively within like Orthodox or like, you know, traditional Judaism. And that has more to do with Christianity than it does to do with anything to do with Jesus, I honestly think. But
yeah.
But what's interesting is, so basically you have Satan as neutral in Judaism and evil in Christianity, and Jesus as bad in Judaism and good in Christianity. And so you're never going to have this seeing eye to eye. But what I would argue from a more historiographical like perspective and looking at, you know, more of like the anthropology and the cultural perspective of how these ideas come about, like it's pretty clear to me that in a way, well, so also before I go into this, because there's some people who would see this very negatively, but doesn't Jesus refer to Peter as Satan, not as, you know, the Satan, but as a Satan?
Absolutely. When he basically calls him God.
Sorry, what were you saying?
Go ahead, Lance. Go ahead, Lance.
He's referring to like the spirit behind Peter, because Peter's trying to get him to like not go and die. You know, he's trying to get him to not go and die for the sins of the world. And Jesus is like, no, this is my mission. And then Peter's like, no, it's not your mission. You should be like how we think you're supposed to be. This messianic guy that's going to take out Rome and win. Like, you're going to do it with a sword, right? It's like, no, I didn't come here to fight them. I came to like die for them. That's like, oh yeah. And that's why he calls them Satan there. Because it's to also like try to wake Peter up. Like, this isn't what I came here for. This isn't my mission. as
Cool.
Messiah.
I was going to say, I'll let you go,
Yeah.
Ariel. Just let me know when I can unpack my whole gumbo with when I bring in Lucifer and the whole rest of the package.
Oh yeah. So I mean, what I would say to that is, and kind of going with Graham's multi-tiered interpretation. Let's say that there's a spirit of Satan, or a Satan-like spirit that's trying to tell Peter, don't let him go. Okay, that's one way to read it. But then the other way would be to read it that it's literally just saying that Peter's opposing him. He's saying, don't do this, and regardless of why. But if that's the case, if Peter can be understood as a Satan for simply opposing Jesus, doesn't that make Jesus a Satan to the temple?
I would have to agree.
I would agree if you're. Yeah, I mean, I'd agree if you're doing if you're just making up by the terms. You know what I mean? Like you're not saying well, this is the spirit of. This isn't the real spirit of Satan, but he's got to the Jews he's got the spirit of the accuser, because he's going, hey guys, you guys are doing some bad stuff here at the temple, y'all should really consider changing your mind. You know what I mean?
So that's my point.
Like that, yeah.
Because this idea of Satan isn't viewed as negative, if you don't view Jesus as negative, then you can actually see how the two are pretty aligned, because you have this, but the thing is, it's not that Jesus is I think kind of what you get is this idea that he is able to embody both kind of this, Satan-like role, again, not within a negative context that we would view it today, but he also embodies this idea of Christ, or Sophia, of wisdom, and so in that you have this dualism, which also kind of matches the idea of being all man and all God, which the more that I the more that I look at it in this context, the more I can start to kind of understand how the more that Christian theology kind of makes sense to me, even though it's not what I believe. Because you there?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, the majority of I would counter probably with that, when you're studying Second Temple literature, Satan, Belial, and Samael, and some of the other ones, they do start to get chaotic in that time. They do start to become and that's probably someone can argue well, that's because of Hellenism and stuff like that. But they do get more chaotic, where it's yeah, there's actually an enemy of God, and they're gonna have to be vanquished by evil, or they're gonna have the evil is gonna be vanquished by Yahweh in some way, some form, probably through a Messiah figure, because that's what Enoch puts out there, and some other texts that aren't in the Bible, some Jewish texts that get referenced in the New Testament too, and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, yeah.
So Graham,
I don't know what else to add to that, but
you ready? You ready for me to serve up my gumbo?
Sure.
Okay. Where I'm coming from is, I'm going to break this down kind of chronologically. You're starting out with sort of that adversary Hasatan, in sort of like Job, where it's the prosecuting attorney kind of adversary. The next concept that gets layered in there is the concept of Lucifer, morning star Venus, and that's the idea of light. And I'm going to pull from Rudolf Steiner a little bit on some of my interpretation here as I go, where that's sort of like knowledge, and it's not a good or bad knowledge. It's just knowledge that could be used for either good or bad. Now, where the good or bad comes in is more or less from Zoroastrianism and the concept of Ahriman. So you have the concept of knowledge, and then you have also the concept of like that selfishness using it for bad, and those are two different axes. And Ahriman being the axis for bad, Ahura Mazda being the axis for good.
So
and
just real quick, because something that's never made sense to me is how, like, why you have Jesus. Again, this is within one of the Gospels, but that he says to the Pharisees or whatever, you are of, and I think there's different ways that it gets translated, but basically you are of the father, the devil, or something, or you are of, like it gets translated typically as you are of your father, the devil, but like you are of the father of the devil, or you are of the father of the devil. I forget which one is the most accurate, but basically, like, it almost seems like there's a syncretization of ideas in Zoroastrianism, possibly with like Hellenistic Judaism, and basically this idea of, so for instance, in old Israelite tradition, you would have had El Elyon, so the highest God. Then you would have had what is it? You would have had, one of his descendants. I don't know if it would have been directly, but basically Yahweh. And so with it almost seems like maybe there's this idea where El Elyon, the highest God, or the Hypsistos, is being understood as Ahura Mazda, or like understood like Ahura Mazda, and then Yahweh is being understood as similar to Ahriman. And so that's why you can have this idea of Jesus's father and the father of the Israelites, or referring to the people, the one who they're worshiping, and the whole idea that he came to direct them to the true one, as opposed to the false one, being basically true one being El, and versus the false one being Yahweh.
Everything you're saying there makes a lot of spiritual sense as far as I see things, Ariel. I'm not sure the actual mechanics behind it, but I can definitely sign off. You're definitely onto something. Tag into Lance.
I mean, I would probably say that, yeah, Zoroastrianism had some influence, just like Babylon had some influence, and but I also take a position that the Hebrew texts that we have today are from the scribe Ezra. So, like, because like you see these parts in Genesis where it's like, well, this spot was where Jacob wrestled the angel, but we call it this today, and it's like, well, why didn't they just keep the original name, right? Well, it's because that's not the name anymore. And so people need a place, or they need a name for that place that they know of today. So they know that that's where Jacob had his, experience, So like I take the position, there's a scholarly argument to be made that like Ezra, when they got back from exile from Babylon, because of Cyrus. I think that's right. Yeah, I think that's right. That Ezra put together what the Old Testament that we have today, right? Yeah. So there's going to be some influence from Babylon, some influence from, because like he's reacting to some of that too. Like lots of Genesis is like reacting to Babylonian gods, honestly. Like a lot of it is, and then some of it's to Egypt, some of it's to, everybody that they had to deal with to put this together.
100%.
It's like Moses dealt with Egypt. Yeah. So I mean, there's going to be some influences like that. Like in Isaiah, there's that part where it says, "I craft." Some people make it. People say it's I create light and darkness, like it. That's a reference to Zoroastrian religion, because they were in Persia at some point, and they had to get, when they came back from it, they had some Zoroastrian influence on them. So they were like, okay, well, Zoroastrianism isn't crafting good and evil. It's or good and light and darkness, I should say, because that's what the actual translation is. Some Calvinists try to say that it's I craft good and evil, and that's like, no, that's not it, because God's not supposed to craft evil. You know?
So what it is
so anyway, yeah.
So it's Yotzer Or Ubore Choshech. So the one who forms light and creates darkness. Oseh Shalom ve Oseh Shalom ve Borera. The one who makes peace and creates bad. So like they're two different things, but they're getting paralleled.
I was going to say, I'll go ahead, Lance. Go ahead and finish, Lance.
No, you go ahead.
No, I want to hear what you have to say. I'm going to go on. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I mean, it's all I was going to say is it's a reference to Zoroastrianism. Like, it's definitely so. Yeah,
no, I was going to tag in because I've done a lot of research into that time period because I have most of an actual scholarly paper of all things done on a biography of Nabonidus. And, because that goes into a lot of that time period. And one of the things that I'm noticing is there's some clear linkage between Zoroastrianism and the return from exile. And one of the things I wonder with Lance is what he actually dates Second Temple Judaism on, because, again, after seeing some of the recent scholars, I have trouble extending it much back beyond the Hasmoneans. And it's like they have had a different sort of Judaism from the return to exile until, again, probably Alexander for a few years, and with the Ptolemy, with the Septuagint rewrite. And what I'm seeing with the origin of with Zoroastrianism ties in there is you don't see a lot of strong evidence of Cyrus himself being Zoroastrian. The strong Zoroastrian signal comes in, with Darius a little bit later, and he's cited as basically really funding the building of the temple. And I'm seeing that, it's almost like they were finalizing it's like they were like almost sister religions in their origin, with the post-exilic Judaism and Zoroastrianism on the other hand is sort of what I'm seeing. I'm going to tag to see what you guys think of what I'm seeing of the territory. Tag.
So you mean almost?
Yeah, I mean.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think that there is. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ariel.
I was just going to say it's almost kind of like, like Second Temple Judaism, so this would be like Second Temple Hellenic Judaism, and Christianity, how they're also kind of like siblings.
Definitely see that. Go ahead. I want to hear what you have to say, Lance.
Yeah, I mean, so like I like how Alan Segal and Michael Heiser kind of put it. Like, you don't just get like one Judaism, right? It's kind of like how, okay, it'd be like if I said like Texan Christians are way different from New York Christians, right? So in Judaism, you would say like in the Second Temple period, you'd be like, well, the ones in Samaria, they're a lot different from the ones in Jerusalem there. And the ones in Ethiopia are way different from both of those guys, right? So there was kind of all these competing like sects of Judaism all together. And like you did get like the three main groups, like Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes, like that kind of thing. But then you got little various subgroups, but like in general, like it is all like different sects and this all morphs together into like the Second Temple period where, you get the context of the entire New Testament, right? And like I do see like there's probably some Zoroastrian influence, and most of it's like reactionary to it, right? So it's like well, Babylon did this to us, and they try to make us worship these gods. Well, we're going to react to it by putting this in Genesis, and when we're explaining the Genesis narrative, that's why we're going to have this here. That's like when we're reacting to Egypt, like Moses is fighting, the gods with some crocodiles, like when he does the staff. Because it never actually says serpents. People make it serpents, but it's actually a crocodile or a dragon, honestly, which is interesting.
Wait, what are you talking about?
But yeah.
So
you know how when Moses fights the sorcerers?
Yeah.
Oh no! I'm talking when Moses fights the when he goes up against the Pharaoh, and the Pharaoh sends out his magicians, and they get snakes, and so Moses puts down his staff. Yeah. No, you're good. I didn't make it clear. So, when he does that though, it's actually, I think it's nefesh, so it's like serpent. So it's like you could do dragon, right? And yeah, nakash, which I think it's interesting because it's like it's not a snake. It's like a serpent or a dragon, or it's probably a crocodile, because back in that time the god Sadok, I think it is. I think it's Sadok. I can't remember.
Zadok?
Anyways, it's the crocodile god in Zadok. Yes, that's right. But Zadok, like that's basically what's going on. They're using the power of Zadok, and then like Yahweh's using the power of Zadok against them to be like, well, I control Zadok, So yeah, it's kind of interesting. I don't know. That's something that popped in my head, anyways. Like most of it's all a reaction.
Do you know where this is in Exodus?
Let me look. Whoops.
While you're looking that up, I wanted to comment there and say thank you, Lance. You pointed me exactly to a term that I had been looking for. Judaism and Zoroastrian basically co-evolved together, where one was very much sort of a reaction and reaction and counter-reaction to the other. No, I wasn't able to put that together until you were talking.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you, Lance.
7, yeah, no problem. Exodus 7 through 8 is what it is. It's when they fight against Phineas and are actually they're not named, but Paul names them, which
So this word tanin, it's not as simple. So it's modern day tanin means.
That's right. It's tanin. My bad.
So, so tanin is used in contemporary Hebrew to refer to crocodiles, but the only problem is that, was it like, let's see, serpent, dragon, sea monster. So like there is definitely this understanding that it could be referring to them, but the thing is that it's kind of like the same with a Lilith. Like we know that the Lilitu is definitely a reference to night owls, but we also know that Lilitu were night demons to the Babylonians. So they were basically, it's kind of like how the Loch Ness monster is fictional, but it's based off of something real, most likely.
Right. Yeah, and you got it right there. I messed it up actually because I thought it said nefesh, but it says tannin, and then I just remembered that it was tannin. But yeah.
But yeah, I mean, even if it was not,
it's interesting though.
Okay, wait. So this might be interesting. So let's see. Okay, so, and they became serpents. So yeah, it seems like they're all turning into. So in all these cases, it's using tanin to refer to them, not just his. So it's not like he's one-upping them by having a tanin and they have a nachash. They're all taninim.
Right. Except that I think it does eat it, right? I think in the deal it says it swallows their staffs, so it wins. Yeah. So my God is better than your God, basically. Yahweh's better than the Egyptian gods. So
He's hungrier.
Yeah. Yeah, he's hungrier. He also swallows Mont. I don't know if you've seen that reference. It says like he swallows the god of death in Isaiah, and that's a reference to like Mont. Who's a Babylonian. No. Yeah,
Canaanite.
Yeah. He's a god too or whatever. So yeah, Canaanite god. Yeah.
So
which I think really that one's kind of interesting. Most of the way most of the way Judaism evolves is just like we're reacting to all these other gods. Like that's pretty much how it goes about, honestly. Like, so yeah, with Zoroastrianism, it does the same thing because they all got exiled to Persia at one point. So it's like, like I mean, we've got a whole book on that with Esther. Esther.
And it's perfect timing.
She got a.
It's perfect timing. It's going to be Purim on Monday.
Right.
It seems, there must be a bit of a delay. So, is there anything else you want to say? I won't interrupt you at all.
No, I got nothing. I'm good.
All right. What about you, Graham?
Yeah, I was going to say some of what Lance was saying there prompted some thoughts to me, and I was looking up there, and it's the idea of it being an unknown animal prompted me. It's like I sat there. It's like there was an Egyptian god that had an animal that they couldn't identify. So I went and looked there, and that god is Set, who is again associated with tends to be associated with the Hyksos and all that one. And that's I'm seeing some patterns there, tagging there.
Yeah, I've even made the argument that Set and Sedek are the same deity, just referred to in different languages. But basically, so you have Set, who is the twin brother of Osiris. So Osiris in Egyptian is Wasir, not Osiris. So Wasir and Set and Wasir. And they're the children of, I think it's Nuit, who is like the sky goddess, and then I think Geb. Yeah, Geb the earth and Nuit the sky. And then somehow, but ultimately the creator of the Egyptian, or the world in Egyptian mythology is Amun. So you have Amun, who's like this ultimate, father you could view. And then you have this sky goddess. And so what's interesting is there's Samkuniathon, who is a Greek, or like a Phoenician writer writing in Greek, writes about these two twin gods named Misor, or Mitzor, and Sedek. So you have Set and Sedek, and Mitzor and Wasir. Like, it might be a bit of a stretch, but the thing is that, you basically have Mitzor, which is derived from the same Semitic root as Mitzrayim, which means Egypt. So you could argue Mitzor is the god of Egypt because his name is cognate with it. Or maybe not cognate, but it's lexically connected. And then you have the fact that Set was the god of the foreigners in Egypt, or essentially the god of the Canaanites. And Sedek was also the god of the Canaanites. It was another epithet for El. So basically you have Osiris and El, or Osiris and Sedek, as twin brothers. And according to Samkuniathon, he writes that their parents are Amunos and Magos. And one thing that's really interesting is that I've actually been able to trace potentially this one goddess Magos all the way to East Asia in the form of Magu or Makhu. Like, it's really wild. And the thing that connects her is cannabis, because it probably has to do with the spread of the Scythian civilization, or because they were trading it, and even in the Hebrew Bible it says that the kana was being brought from a faraway land, and interestingly enough, really close to where a lot of the like basically in the Galilee or just south of it, you have the Beit Shean Valley, which in ancient times was called, well, at least in Greek times it was called Scythopolis, so the city of the Scythes or city of the Scythians.
No, interesting there because you're tying in with some of what I was saying the other day, where where the cannabis disappeared for the anointing oil after that point could be connected to Cyrus losing his head to Tomyrus in battle, and the Scythians basically cutting off the cannabis trade. As far as Set goes, yeah, Geb and Nut are the parents. Interestingly, Sobek and Maga are Set's offspring. So that could be one, that's one of those where it could be following down there. And I see where you're going, and I can sign off that you're definitely onto something. For me, what you're talking about there with the two of them being equal, this is where my best fit abductive logic comes in, because you have to basically keep throwing more and more evidence and then decide, is it a better fit that these are both, two different ways of talking about the same deities, or were they actually two different deities? And it's tough to decide until you get more resolution with more data. Last point on Amun. Amun was the god of the unknown and secrets. And it was only became the creator god later on in the 18th dynasty, where it became, 17th, 18th, where it became Ra Amun. And it became associated with Ra, and thereby becoming, picking up the portfolio of the creator. Tagging out for you guys.
So, Graham, there's only one thing you didn't take into account, though. The secret, because he, God of secrets, his secret was that he was the creator. He just didn't tell anyone.
And that's exactly what his priest said.
How convenient. And I think, honestly, you might have a similar thing that happens with Yahweh getting understood and I mean, it's interesting because you have a similar thing that happens with the name of Yahweh happening to the name of Zeus. How it's understood as basically being almost like a blueprint for all of reality. Like how, within the name is contained all of reality. It's very interesting, but it's it's an idea that almost it supplants the idea of Uranos or Shamayim, the word that literally means the heavens, that which everything exists in roughly. Well, given that's not how they would have viewed it, they would have viewed it as everything that's in the heavens and we're on Earth. They viewed it as separate, but just this idea of I mean, so you have it with Amun Ra, you have it with I'm trying to think. Wow, why am I not able to think of anything else right now at the moment? I mean, I think you could maybe even argue that it happens not with deities, but with the epithets of them in some ways. With in Islam, the only real one I'm thinking of though is Al-Aziz, which is a cognate with Azazel or Azizos, but in Islam it gets understood as being a name for God, for Allah, rather than a name for a demon or some deity that's viewed as not being worshipped or whatever.
No, you're definitely onto something. It's sort of like you also have in Egypt a lot of the different Horuses. You had Horus of the horizon, Horus of the dawn, and also cognate to all the names for Marduk and all. Tagging again, seeing what Lance has to say. Want to hear from him.
I don't have much on this subject, honestly.
No worries. We could always continue with the.
I'm just listening.
No worries. Just want to hear if you have something to say. Ariel and I he'll follow me out on some of my branches and then reel me in when I fall off. I appreciate that from you, Ariel.
No worries.
Y'all are good. I don't have any. I don't really have any.
No worries. We'd always watch more of the thing about Perpetua and then comment on that.
Christ and to his Father, and not to the emperor.
You would have been always looking over your shoulder. Is someone following me? Or or does someone know I'm a Christian? You would have been paranoid, and you would have been kind of afraid to really talk to anyone openly.
The Empire's secret police, the Frumentari. They use a network of informers to hunt down dissidents. Perpetua is charged with treason. She's sent to prison to await her fate. She keeps a diary, the earliest words that still survive, written by a Christian woman.
I am not to fight with beasts, but against the devil. And I know that victory is waiting for me.
The ultimate test for any believer. To die for your faith. Christian dissident Perpetua faces a horrible death in the arena at Carthage. Christians are thrown to wild animals, or covered in tar and burned alive, or beheaded. But Perpetua can still save herself if she makes an offering to the Roman gods.
The Romans come to these people and they say, look, they're stirring up trouble for us. Make some public declaration that says you're not against the state. Admit that the emperor is a god, and that'll show that you're okay.
Perpetua's family visits her in prison. She's allowed to nurse her baby. Her father pleads with her to back down and accept the Roman rules.
Daughter, he said, have pity on me. Do not abandon me. Have pity on your baby. Give up your pride. I tried to comfort him, saying, it will happen as God wills.
A real Christian can't denounce their religion. They can't do it in public, they can't do it in private, they can't do it in their heart, they can't do it at all because they will burn in hell forever. That's the belief.
So I'd like your opinion on that. Like, why is that the case?
Go ahead, Lance.
Well, it's not fully the case there that like she's gonna burn in hell for all eternity for just because of that or whatever. Like, yeah, she's not supposed to deny Christ, obviously. But I think, I don't know if any of you have read David Bentley Hart, but like the early church did not always think of hell as like eternal damnation and eternal conscious torment. Like Hart actually brings up a lot of it where like it's a purifying fire, like and it's not eternal. So like Saint Isaac the Syrian.
So you mean like the refiner's fire?
A bunch of the early. Yeah, like some of that, and like Hart makes a good case for it. Like he makes a good case about how like the word aeon does not always mean like eternity. Like it doesn't mean like infinite. It means like indefinite period of time. but it doesn't mean forever or indefinite.
I actually have a theory on this. So the word aeon, so the n and the m sound are connected, but so how would you say aeon with a m? Aeon, aeon. Now drop the e, yom, yom, which means day in Hebrew. And when God makes the world in 7 yamim, is it maybe that he's creating the world in 7 aeons? Because that's already how people understand that.
I mean, well, yeah, even in Judaism, like even in the Second Temple, they don't necessarily think, oh, it's 7 literal 24-hour days. They're not always doing that, you know. Even like Saint Augustine in the early church, he's like, I don't know that it has to be literal. Like he's like, I don't think that has to be a literal 7 24-hour days, because he's like, because he brings up like what is it? He brings up like how the sun and the moon are created on like the 3rd day. So he's like, it could be indefinite from that point on. Also, like he's like, there's all sorts of ways we can look at this, you know.
I actually found something really interesting about this. So the word for herb, that I forget exactly where it's used in multiple places, but the point is the word that's used to describe the sun and the moon when they're created, because it's not shemesh v'yareach, it's was it like the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. And so with this, you have the word which is orot, or the plural of ora. And here, actually, let me pull this up real quick. So let's see. So greater light. This is really fascinating because this blew me away. And also is a support for, well, so here. So check this out. So ma'or. Oh, wait, is it? The word is ma'or. Ma'or, luminary. Dang it. Okay, here. So is some of 7 sacred lampstands. Let's see, or robes. Shoot. Let's see. What's that? Herb or basically the word for light is also, I'm going to have to look this up. Aura, herb. So what's interesting is so the menorah, it's understood as being manor, or like min or from light, and it's just like the feminine form of that. Let's see, Hebrew. So it's either menorah, like, yeah, here it is. Let's see, ora. So check this out. So ora, light, late Mishnaic period compared to orta, evening light, moonlight, or starlight. Light opposed to chashecha, so choshech, so opposed to darkness. Light of joy and happiness, Esther 8:16, plural intensive, orot, light of life, Isaiah 26:19. Light that quickens dead bodies as do the plants. And so what's interesting is that this word, basically it's this idea that, okay, wait, here it actually has it. So, so this part's actually sung after Havdalah. So it's La Yehudim Hayta Ora V'Simcha V'Sason V'Yikra. I forget how the rest goes, but what's interesting, what if you read this as, for the Jews there was herb and gladness? Because here, the field together herbs and found vine. So like literally same word used in different contexts.
Mm-hmm.
The dew of orat talech. Wait, where does it get? It's saying the dew of the dawn, but literally this is the dew of. Holy crap! I think I might have just found a drug reference here. So as the dew or the moist, like basically like the stuff that sticks to the herbs, was this like the dew of the what's the word, dew of the herb and the earth. I don't know. There's something interesting. I'm gonna have to look into this another time. But basically,
I was going to say I'm definitely picking up some erotic connotations as well.
How?
Feminine moisture.
Oh, I mean, so in this case, it would I mean, not exactly, because the earth is understood as the feminine, but then the moisture, like for instance, within a ancient Near Eastern Semitic context, moisture in this case is probably more likened to basically to the seed of God, if that makes any sense. Like God provides the fertility for the land to be able to grow.
Understood. I was just picking up another level of meaning there. That's all. Tag.
I mean, I see where you're coming from, but you know, again, it's not something that's specific to any one sex. All right, so wait, aura? Oh, right. That's how we got to talking about it. But so the other possible meaning for menorah is actually min aura, that it's from the aura. And what's interesting is the instructions for how to make the menorah are taken from the tree of life, which we know in Assyria was being understood as the cannabis plant. So it's like it's possible that might be a connection, but you know, it's just one of my areas of study. It's not as important to the whole thing we're talking about today. Though, I mean, I do think there are people who they'd look at this and they'd say, "Oh, you're just trying to find a religious excuse to use cannabis." It's like, I mean, first of all, I don't need one. It literally says in Genesis that God created all green herb-bearing seed for our consumption. So, like, you don't even have to interpret it to be specifically cannabis to say that God's chill with it.
You understand you're preaching to the choir here, Ariel. Tag.
Oh, yeah, 100%. But there are people who they'd be like, "Oh, you're trying to soil my religion with your drugginess." And it's like, no, you're trying to purge our religion from its drugginess. And again, there's nothing wrong with the use of drugs so long as it's, you know, responsible. And I'd actually argue that the way that it was being used, even if the way it was prescribed in the Bible, is probably one of the least possible abusive ways. Like literally, that you're only actually able to really get the benefit if you're the high priest and on Yom Kippur. Like at the end of the day, it's pretty clear they were trying for people not to get high, probably because people were, and then they were prophesying on their own and making it, because there's actually so many prophets that aren't even mentioned. Like there's more prophets in Israel than are mentioned. It just happens to be that the major ones, well, the minor ones are still relatively major because they got written down. But the thing is that if someone was prophesying before and it was because of the oil or because of the incense, then all of a sudden, well, you can't have that because, and I mean, think about it. There always was this battle between the prophets and the priests. People act like they were in conjunction, but they weren't. The prophets were almost always, condemning the priesthood.
Some of what you're hitting on there, I'm going to say first off, is the oldest rule in the psychedelic book is set and setting. That determines so much. The second one is you're talking about with the priests versus the prophets is the relationship of religion and truth. A religion is inherently trying to capture spiritual truth that works for a whole community, but that doesn't necessarily, by pulling it, it will pull it off of that pure truth because of where the community goes. And that's where you're seeing the problem with the Jewish people at times, where they end up getting wealthy, that they fall down from their faith, and that's why the disaster happens later. And it's the prophets that are basically an individual that sees the truth and is trying to warn the community before it's too late. Tag to see if that resonates with either you or Lance.
I don't know.
Yeah. So, wait, sorry, just one more time, real quick.
Oh, I was talking about religion is inherently something for the group of people. And it has a truth that it compromises an individual for the sake of the group. And what can happen there is when the group, as you know, sort of like a group can get off base, it can drag itself away from, the pure truth. And I was saying that's what's happened with some of the Jewish people over time. It's like they get wealthy, they fall down, don't practice as much, and the prophet is like an individual as opposed to the group. He's an individual that stands up for basically God's word. And trying to like warn the populace before it's too late and that sort of thing. And it's a question of an individual truth versus a group truth, and where the group truth can vary away from that pure truth of God. Tagging again.
At any point, did you mention something about so when you said prophets, you meant like someone who's speaking for God? Sorry, just because, and I mean, obviously that's not what I thought you meant, because I mean, it would still kind of apply if you were talking about prophets within the context of money, because in a lot of contexts, when Jews are able to integrate into societies more, that's also when you start to have this falling away from religion.
No, I was saying prophet with an E, not prophet with an I.
Okay, sorry, that was throwing me off. But I mean,
it's very fair, especially since my degree is economics.
Yeah. So, shoot, I kind of lost what I was going to say before, but yeah. So 420 said, trust Graham to pick up on the eroticism. Love you, brother Graham. And cannabis is barely a drug. We have cannabinoid and THC receptors for a reason. I mean, definitely, but it's still a drug. Like, we also have opioid receptors. It doesn't mean that's not a drug. I just think that it's like, it's not that. Yeah, and no worries, Lance. Whenever you need to go, it's no problem. It's been great having you on. We definitely need to.
Absolute pleasure to meet you, Lance. You got great insight.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you.
I like. I like having talks with all sorts of people.
Yeah, it's
Same
always,
here.
It's always, so Philip said, given the hyper-polarized topic of global warming, do you think the Jubilees could refer to weather patterns? California every 7 years has an El Nino, wildfires, and La Nina, blizzard, floods. Not many change topic. Just going to jump before you forget. Yeah, no worries. I mean, I don't know. Like, I think it might just be one of those things that you see a pattern of 7 in nature. But in terms of looking to the Bible to, speak on global warming, I don't know specifically about that. But what I can say is that it's very clear that that at the very least Solomon, or whoever was writing in his name, really hated water pollution. Like, he really hated it. So, like, it's literally in the beginning of Ecclesiastes. I actually did a paint.
That and the Torah, the Torah has so many sacrifices that are for specifically like cleansing the air and cleansing the land. I know Jubilees, like the Jubilee years, like they're supposed to be so that the soil can. It's to do a reset for everybody, right? But it's also to give the land a break, because if you farm on it and you keep doing this kind of farming on it, like the land cannot sustain itself anymore. So you have to end up you have to give it a break, basically, and that's basically the gist of the Jubilee. So, that'll be my answer to that. I don't know that it necessarily is like global warming, but I don't know that it's necessarily global warming, but it probably comes into some of that. So
I think Philip was just trying to pull it in with the global warming topic to make it on topic for us.
Something that is.
I mean, it's an interesting question, though. So.
Yeah. So, shoot, I just lost the thought again. dang it, but yeah, so where is it? So the wind, just okay. Let's see, what is it? Yeah, the words of Kohelet, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, said Kohelet, and so like literally Hevel Havalim. Like it's this idea that it's like fleeting things, like the fleeting of fleetingest. Vanity really isn't a good translation, but what profit had man of all his labor wherein he labors under the sun? One generation passes away and another generation comes, and the earth remains forever. The sun also rises, and the sun goes down and returns to the place where it arises. The wind goes towards the south and turns up toward the north. It turns about ever continually in its circuit, and the wind returns to its circuits. All the river runs into the sea, yet the sea is not full. Back to the places where the rivers go, they flow back again. All things toil to weariness, man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. That which has been is that which will be, and that which has been done is that which shall be done. And there is nothing new beneath the sun. Is there a thing whereof it is said, see, this is new, it hath been already in the ages? So because of this is the reason why, and in a way, the fundamentalists who are like, global warming's not changing or not happening, and they argue it's not happening because, so I'm not saying they're right in their argument, but they are right that there has been, climate events in the past. The thing, though, is they're not taking into account what caused it. So the thing is, yeah, for all we know, this is nothing new under the sun. Maybe there was this, massive issue before, but it was due to some sort of massive release of carbon or whatever, or even just, but the point is, regardless of why things happened in the past, people look at the fact that it happened in the past and they use it to justify the fact that we shouldn't worry about what's happening now, despite, we're already starting to feel the effects, but.
Right. Well, guys, it's been good, but I am going to have to go. So it was good talking to y'all, though.
Yeah, you
absolutely. Hope to do it again, Lance. Right. Take care.
Yeah, definitely. All right, guys.
Take care.
Yeah, I was going to say, some of my thoughts on the whole topic of global warming is the idea of you have a temperature, it goes up and down. And part of it is I've looked over the charts over, again, millions of years here and doing my research for my snippets and stuff. And when I first, back in the 70s, the first thing I ever heard about global climate change was about the coming ice age. And I agree with you, Ariel. We need to look at stuff, but it's a question of, I see it as hubris in thinking that all of a sudden today, us predicting global warming is any different than the scientists in the 70s predicting a coming ice age. And I come from again, I'm an old guy. How much stock should I put in either of those two predictions? Tag in to see what you think about that part.
So if you actually go earlier, the 50s, I think it was ExxonMobil. I'm not sure what, actually, I'm rusty on which one paid for the study. But basically, there was this oil company that they had a study done to see what the effects of what they were doing, and it was hidden. I forget when it got leaked out or whatever, but that it turns out that their prediction back in the 50s are like what we're going through right now tracks with those predictions.
No, absolutely. The other one that I notice is when I look at the historical models, it tracks again with what we're seeing today. But the biggest threat is not so much that we're close to what the maximum temperature the Earth tends to hit at right now. And what the bigger threat is that tends to happen I think it's every 40,000 years or something, is all of a sudden a huge drop of almost 10 degrees. And that's much more of, it's happened like an EKG, like a heartbeat to the Earth, to Gaia. and that's threatening to hit, sometime within the next, say, very soon, from a geological standpoint, which could be sometime in the next few hundred years. But
so if we're on this trajectory, we don't have to worry because we'll be long gone.
Well, you're hitting the old economist joke. You have short term and long run, and in the long run, we're all dead.
That's really fucking depressing because it could also be used to justify basically anything.
Oh yeah, which
anyway.
You can see how that works with corporations.
Oh yeah, have you ever seen Succession?
No.
I think you'd enjoy it.
I'm sure I would. Have you ever seen the documentary The Corporation?
No, but it sounds familiar.
It's worth watching. It's all about the history of the corporation, its rise from basically the beginning of the stock exchanges in Holland back in the day. And again, for my money, that's one of the most powerful creations man's done, right up there with atomic weapons.
What money?
No, the corporation. The concept of the corporation and how it works. It's a whole entity unto itself.
So, I mean, it's kind of interesting because that you could argue that's kind of the idea of Mammon.
Yeah, no, it's a very good analogy for like an egregore as a corporation sort of concept. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do probably need to get going soon. So let's finish up this video because I have something at 7:30. So it kind of worked out. He had to go when he did, so that kind of gives us a good cue to finish off.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so Philip said, yeah, in the 70s, people made small talk by bringing up sports and the weather. Now, if you bring up the weather, people accuse you of inciting a riot. I don't quite understand.
What he's saying to me sounds like what I've experienced with the whole critical theory thing. As soon as you say something, somebody who disagrees sees that as a reason to pick the fight with you.
So you mean like because you say, oh, it's going to rain, and someone's like, oh, but it's like it doesn't look like it, and so then they get it all up in your face about it or something?
Oh, I was actually going a little more extreme. I was sitting there and thinking that if you say it's partly cloudy, they're going to want to throw fists at you because they see it as partly sunny.
Oh, okay.
Just because you're describing is the glass half full, is the glass half empty, and if you pick the wrong one, all of a sudden you're in a fight.
I have a solution. Just smash the glass, and you can say the glass is fully broken.
And then you use the glass as a weapon against the other guy. Great idea, Ariel.
What? No, I'm talking about a Jewish wedding. What are you talking about?
Oh, I was talking about a good old, soccer fight. Or football. Football if you're over in England.
We're not hooligans, are we?
Well, not unless we're drunk enough.
I don't get drunk. At least not anymore. Just, meh. Herb's much better in my opinion, but teach their own.
There's a time for a good drunk.
Imagine how profoundly courageous one had to be. To put your life on the line and say, yes, I am a follower of Jesus Christ. The courage to do that simple act, speaks volumes about the power of faith.
According to her diary, Perpetua goes willingly to her death. Her courage inspires one of the prison guards, a man called Pudens, to convert. Thousands of Christians are executed. They become known as martyrs. But the more Christians the Romans kill, the more popular the religion becomes. In 100 years,
it's like trying to clean up, like say you, given, I want to be clear. Okay, let me think how to word this best. Okay, let's say you have a bunch of grapes and you want to get rid of the grapes. And for whatever reason, you think that the best way to get rid of grapes is to smash them rather than to just... it's not a perfect parallel because grapes aren't like... The whole point is by persecuting the Christians, they only strengthen them. It's the same thing that happened with Jews. It's the only reason why Jews are still why Jews are like... Wait, Skip Gates? I thought his name was Henry Louis Gates, or is that his like nickname? But what was I saying? That yeah, basically persecution. It's kind of like it's almost like an egg. The persecuted is an egg, and the persecution is like boiling hot water. It scalds, it fucking hurts, but it's also what strengthens and what actually causes it to last. So, like, for instance, without that persecution, if you drop an egg, it's going to splatter. With persecution, it's going to be able to survive. It's going to bounce. Given, I don't think that means that we should go around persecuting people because it also causes a lot of really nasty shit, including mirroring and like, for instance, supremacist type ideology. Because you're like, well, they're persecuting us because we're the best. You see that with every religion. So at the end of the day, I think that it's best to look at historic persecution within this lens, but to look at that as a reason for why we need to teach those lessons without, horribly oppressing people. But of course, we live in a society where horribly oppressing people is just the standard.
Well, no, it's one of your two choices. You have the choice of whether you're going to oppress them or whether you're going to let them oppress you. Didn't you learn this critical theory, Ariel?
I thought I had the opportunity to just, not be either.
No, it's one or the other. It's not you don't have other options. That's not how critical theory works. You're thinking Hegel. They toss out that synthesis here. Now, tying this back to that persecution thing, I'm going to throw out one of those biblical concepts, and that's sort of the fiery furnace of truth. And that's the idea that under persecution, it basically burns away anything that's dross, anything that's false. So it's basically whatever survives persecution is what must be true. Going to tag to see what you think on that.
So basically, you're saying that's why Scientology tells people to be in a sauna for 4 hours straight without any air, because they're supposed to get rid of anything that isn't true?
Well, actually, I was thinking more in Scientology. They were just doing it to see if the people would do it and how gullible they were, but I could be wrong there.
No, like I dead ass. Reckless Ben, back in 2017, he infiltrated Scientology, and oh my, honestly, I kind of thought that Scientology was just a scam, but no, it's honestly, so much of a cult. And again, no, I don't think all. Yeah,
I was going to say it was designed to be set up as a cult originally. It was, again, it's the instance of he was hanging around with L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons, the NASA occultist dude. They were hanging around, and it was Scientology was sort of like almost their brainchild of a religion. And that's something that people don't want to admit ever happened. But going to tag to you.
I'm pretty sure plenty of people who are involved in OTO or in that type of stuff, I'm pretty sure the Philamist, the Philamist hate what's his face, Hubbard because he fucked over Parsons.
Oh no, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Is it's like they worked together on it, and then Hubbard just sort of took it and ran with it and turned it into a religion. And the sad thing is, it's like things like Dianetics. It's the traditional. He has a lot of decent ideas in there, but they're almost like bait to drag you in to find more. And as soon as you try to find out more through them, you're hooked. Gonna tag.
Yeah.
The number of followers grows from 200,000 to 6 million. 1 in 10 people in the empire is Christian. From North Africa to Britain, the religion becomes so common, all laws against it are lifted.
I was going to say that the ending there reminds me of, I don't think I shared with you one of my working theories on the whole John the Baptist concept. Have I shared that one with you, Ariel? No? My concept there is I like the idea of basically baptism as almost a near drowning induced near death experience, DMT trip. That's outside of the temple monitoring of it, that he's basically the idea of a rogue basically inducing that DMT, and it's sort of like that near death. If you approach it with the right setting, you basically are able to release the sins and get a new life, and a born again sort of thing is sort of where I'm kind of looking at it as a working theory at current. Tagging to you to see if any of that makes sense.
So interestingly, Neil actually did a video on this kind. Yeah, here, let's watch this and I'll pull it up and then watch a bit of it. But literally, I mean, it's interesting because he talks about this, but in and out.
The enchanted forest of Coast Defense. Here, hidden among the trees, lies a world of wonder, mystery, and mycelium. The forest.
In the year 203, Vivia Perpetua made the most important decision of her life. Perpetua made the most important decision of her life. She chose to become a Christian. Now, when she made this decision, she knew that she was risking her own life, but she did it anyway for the love of God and for the truth. Now, her father did not like this. He asked her why she did this. She then did something very strange. She asked her father, who near him was a water pot, "Do you see this vessel, water pot, or whatever it may be? Can it be called by any other name than what it is?" "No," he replied. "So also, I cannot call myself by any other name than what I am, a Christian." Now, being a
you could call it a pitcher, you could call it a vase, you could call it a amphora. You don't have to say it's not a jug. You just can say it's something else as well. But, then you don't get to be a martyr.
Definitely. The other thing that I was noticing as I was looking up this story, and one of the parts of that I'm working at my theory on the origins of Christianity, that I still want to do that show with Neil on that, but is the idea of aligning this with the Roman emperors and the changes there. And what's happening right here is this is happening right in the beginning of the Severan dynasty. This is under Septimus Severus. And that's actually where they were sacrificed on that one. and that would be, he took over after the year of the 5 emperors, just like the Flavians took after the year of the 4 emperors. And I'm seeing this as one of those, similar like we were talking with Judaism with different waves. I see this one as a different dynasty wave of Christianity, and this being sort of one of those resets of the transition from the previous Nerva Antonine dynasty into the a new Christianity under the Severan dynasty, as opposed to the old one. Tag in to see what you think.
Interesting. So you think that the sacrifice was because it was this new dynasty?
Well, this is one of those where we don't necessarily know whether there ever was a sacrifice. We know that we have this story of her firsthand account, but we don't know what the events were behind that. And especially when you look at the names, it's one of those traditional stories that the names have that archetypal quality to it. Is you have, Perpetua, Felicity. The other ones were, where are they here? It was Saturnius and Secundulus. And then they had a third one, which was Satyrus. And it's one of those where, again, this is kind of similar to the era of Lucian, where you have to wonder how much of this is historical versus something else. Tagging.
Interesting, yeah. One second. So, yeah, sorry, I'm just kind of brains all over the place.
Christian in the early 200s in the city of Carthage was very dangerous. Christians were often killed.
I don't know if you're picking up on this. Yeah, it's one thing to have music in the background, but it feels very you know what I mean? It feels kind of like brainwashy type music.
Yeah, no, I can see where you're going with that one. It's not as obvious, but it's definitely setting that tone to lull you.
Yeah.
For their faith, merely for believing in Jesus Christ. And Perpetua knew this, but she became a Christian anyway. Now, for becoming a Christian, Perpetua was imprisoned at the age of 22, along with 4 others: Felicity, Revocatus, Saturninus, and Secundulus. Perpetua said this about her captivity: "What a day of horror! Terrible heat owing to the crowds, rough treatment by the soldiers. To crown all, I was tormented with anxiety for my baby. Such anxieties I suffered for many days, but I obtained leave for my baby to remain in the prison with me, and being relieved of all my trouble and anxiety for him, I at once recovered my health and my..."
So, just to be clear, she's basically saying, I don't feel anxious about abandoning my child anymore. And this was something that my professor was talking about today in class, is that, because he is Christian, but he's talking about, he can't ever imagine doing this as a father. And it's it does kind of have to make you wonder, what was going on in their minds that, even despite having this, because, see, here's the thing, I guess and this is kind of the thing that I ended up saying, and then I kind of realized that it was actually a wrong statement. But basically, this idea that, because, I was thinking of it in Jewish tradition, almost always when you have martyrdom, it's because you have people that are coming to kill them because they're Jews. But then there's still, not always, but there's still usually this implication that will let you live if you convert. And so now that I think about it, it really is no different, because they're going after you because of what you believe, and you could be saved from death if you only admit that, publicly change your belief, or, publicly say that you do. And so, what was I saying? Basically, there really is not that much difference in the grand scheme of things, because in both cases you could just, feign conversion, say, okay, I'll sacrifice to the emperor, or, yeah, sure, I'll say that Jesus is God so that you guys don't kill me. But at the end of the day, if you truly believe in something so vehemently, the idea of forsaking that is literally worse than death, because you do have these perceptions of what's going to happen. But again, even in those cases, there still are permittance where, like, under threat of death, oh shoot, but yeah, even in Jewish tradition, there's certain things that you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to profane the name of God. I forget exactly all the things, but like
no, I was going to say what you're going on. I don't see it. It's clearly there in Jewish and Christian persecutions, but it's there in persecution in general. It's sort of like the power of government inflicting its will upon people, basically saying you have to do what we say, give up your identity and become part of us. And I was going to sit there and say, in the Middle Ages, they finally recognized about what that false conversion could do, and they fixed the hole there with the Spanish Inquisition. That will show those people. We'll have an investigation to see who's really faking it beneath there. And you can see how well that solution worked. Jeez, tag out.
So Lance said, that's the kind of music I was going to try to use to brainwash Ariel and Graham. Sorry, I had to leave early, but appreciate you all having me on. Perpetua reminds me of the Maccabees and mother and her son's martyrdom. Yeah, interesting. I get that same vibe too. Also, wait, you were trying to brainwash us? I know you're joking, but but yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right that you see this with all persecutions, but I think the key difference is, well, and yeah, you always have, with the Inquisition. I mean, so much so that even, like, the Inquisition even went all the way to Mexico, and a lot of people don't know this. All the way up until, I think it was like the mid-1800s, that the Spanish not the Spanish Inquisition, I don't know if this would have still, yeah, this would have been the Spanish Inquisition. They were still operating, and like this is something that a lot of people really don't know. It's kind of wild, that it's something that people see as medieval, but it really wasn't. It was an institution that existed basically throughout medieval Christendom, all the way up until modernity.
Yeah, actually, I'm looking that up right now. Did they ever actually get rid of it? Get rid of the Inquisition?
Well, they changed the name of the office of Inquisitor.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. What exactly happened to it?
Oh, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that John Paul, the guy who recently died, was that John Paul, or am I?
No, that was, I call him Pope Palpatine, but
no, yeah, but what was his like regnal title?
Oh, I forget off the top of my head. But I was going to say, I just looked up the Inquisition. They actually is 1834. They officially ended the Spanish one.
Okay, so it's not technically the mid; it's more so the quarter 1800s. But I think I'm still roughly, I think I should get like a, I was close enough. But yeah, here.
A prison became a palace to me, and I would rather have been there than anywhere else. She loved her baby so much. Now, one of Perpetua's fellow captives, a lady brought up a slave, Felicity, was even worse off than Perpetua. She dealt with all of these things, and she was 8 months pregnant at the time. But during this time in captivity, they were constantly threatened with death if they refused to renounce their faith. Perpetua's dad came and begged her to give it up so that she would be safe. Even the judge, out of pity, tried to get Perpetua to renounce her faith. But she refused. She said, "We live not in our own power, but in the power of God." And for this, she and
something that doesn't make sense to me. render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and render unto God what is God's. But like, why couldn't she in her heart say, Caesar is not God, and I'm doing this in order to save my own life? You know, render unto Caesar what is Caesar. And I guess that's the whole idea, that it wasn't Caesar's, and that the idea of saying that Caesar was God would have been so heretical. It's basically the same as denying Christ. It's just so wild, because at the end of the day, there were plenty of Christians who also recognized other gods. So, like, why is there this issue? I mean, maybe this idea of martyrdom is actually where you get this idea that it's not acceptable to worship other gods because you should literally die before it.
Yeah, what you're saying there is exactly the reason why I find the explanation of this is sort of a reset template for a new era of Christianity making more sense, where it's like, this is what Christianity is going to be. And like they talked about earlier in the video, where it all of a sudden spread from an underground cult under the Severan dynasty into like all of those millions across the empire. And that was pretty much, you could almost look at that as, was that because the Severan dynasty pretty much backed the sort of concept? Going to tag out, and it's sort of like, I'm leaning that way. Tag.
Fellow captives would pay a massive price. They were sent to the public games to be killed by wild beasts. Felicity, the lady brought up a slave, through the grace of God, gave birth to a girl just a few days before her death. Her baby girl got adopted by a woman in Carthage, thanks to God. Perpetua and Felicity died side by side, purely for the love of God, for the Christian faith, and for the truth. Now, if their lives are pure examples of femininity, motherhood, and faith, then I don't know what is. Saints Perpetua and Felicity, the patron saints of mothers and expectant mothers, may we look to your example in times of trouble with our kids, with our faith, and with our lives.
Excuse me? They literally abandoned their children. Like,
they were becoming martyrs by following Jesus. Doesn't that justify abandoning your children?
maybe, holy crap. Do you think that has anything to do with why there's so many Christian orphans?
No, I think that's because you have a bunch of horny Christian teenagers that don't use birth control.
That's actually a really good answer.
It's the autism in me. When in doubt, just state the obvious facts.
Let's see. So, I mean, I think so. That's let's see. So, let me see if I can find Hannah and her children and her sons. Let's see. Actually, let me see if I can. Let's see. Purim. Let me see what I can find on Purim. Oh, I know what to do. Okay. This is going to give you chills. So, let's see. I need to find the right one. Purim Fest. Is it this one?
The Jewish people not only experienced a miraculous salvation, but they turned around and they attacked their enemies. And the Megillah records that in Shushan they killed 500 Amalekim. Whereupon the king Ahasuerus, turned.
All right, let me see if I can find a better one. See it. Oh, here it is.
BetterHelp gives you access to over 20,000 licensed therapists, meaning that you can get online therapy done soon.
I have to use the restroom.
Welcome to Jewish Wisdom on JTV, the global Jewish channel. Well, the Jewish holiday Purim is just around the corner, so I wanted to share with you something that someone recently showed me, and it kind of blew my mind. So I'd be interested to show it to all of you. Well, the Jewish holiday Purim is just around the corner, so I wanted to share with you something that someone recently showed me, and it kind of blew my mind. So I'd be interested to show it to all of you to see what you think. And if you're not familiar with the Purim story, let me give you a little bit of a background. It's basically about this Persian tyrant called Haman, who issued a decree to wipe out all the Jews. And through a series of seeming coincidences, Haman ends up being hung on the very gallows that he planned to put his arch nemesis on, a Jewish man called Mordecai. Now, there was a rule in place that if a law was decreed, it was impossible to change it. However, after Haman was killed, the king issued a new decree that if any Jew was attacked by a group of anti-Semites, it was within their rights to fight back. And not only was Haman hung on the gallows, but all of his 10 sons, who were co-conspirators in the plot to wipe out the Jews, were also hanged on the gallows. Now, at this point, I want to look at the character of Haman in a bit more detail. Who was he? Well, why did he want to wipe out the Jews in the first place? Haman was a member of a nation called Amalek. And the Torah is very clear that if you're from Amalek, then you ain't really a fan of the Jews. Amalek believes that blind chance governs the world. Amalek believes there's no such thing as right and wrong. And therefore, they are at war with Judaism and Jewish values. Now, the Torah is very clear that the cosmic battle between Amalek and Jewish values will be fought throughout history. And there have been some who have looked at another, more recent anti-Semitic tyrant and considered whether he too showed signs of adhering to the Amalek principles. I'm speaking, of course, of a man called Adolf Hitler. And what's so interesting about Adolf Hitler is that he didn't just want to wipe out the Jews. It's that this mattered to him more than anything else. He was even prepared to put the war effort at risk by diverting trains delivering troops to the Eastern Front and instead taking them to pick up more Jews in Hungary and send them to their deaths. In fact, in his very last radio address, he stated clearly, quote, "Our battle is between the Jews and the Jews alone." The Nazi ideology was rooted in a godless vision of the world, a vision where might is right, where the strong dominate the world.
Not godless, just a... So I have an issue with that. Though I do need to get going soon, so let's just not comment. Let's just finish this. But basically, the thing is that they did believe in God. Most Nazis believed in God. They just believed that God, or for a lot of them, they believed that Jesus was essentially an Aryan who who was sent by God to destroy the Jews. And so it's not as simple as they didn't believe in God. They just didn't believe in the God of any Bible. They made their own.
Week, where you have survival of the fittest, and the greatest threat to this vision was a vision of morality and conscience, where we should care for the weak and the vulnerable. A vision of ethical monotheism first articulated by the Jews. And this is what Hitler said. He said, "It is true, we are barbarians. It is an honorable title to us. I am freeing humanity from a false vision called conscience and morality. The Jews have inflicted 2 wounds on mankind, circumcision on its body and conscience on its soul. The war for world domination will be fought entirely between us, the Germans and the Jews. All else is facade." So we've got 2 crazy tyrannical leaders in history, Haman and Hitler, both with similar ideologies and with similar aims. Now, here's where it gets interesting. At the end of the Purim story, the book of Esther recalls how the Jews defended themselves against their attackers, and it notes how Haman's 10 sons were all hanged on the gallows. So it says, "And the Jews struck at all their enemies with the sword and with slaughter and destruction." They're fighting off these anti-Semites, "and did as they pleased to all those who hated them. And in Shushan, the capital, the Jews slew and destroyed 500 men, including," and then it lists the 10 sons of Haman. So now after Haman's 10 sons have all been hanged, the Jewish queen Esther has a conversation with the king, Ahasuerus, most likely Xerxes. It says, and I quote, "That same day, the number of those killed in Shushan, the capital, was reported to the king. The king said to the queen Esther, 'In Shushan, the capital, the Jews have slain and destroyed 500 men, including the 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of the king's providences? What is your request now? It shall be granted to you. What is your petition further? It shall be fulfilled.'" The king is saying to Esther, basically, listen, whatever you want, I'll give it to you. An iPad, a Ferrari, whatever it is, I'll make it happen. And what does Esther say in return? Have a look. It says, "Esther replied, 'If it pleases the king, allow the Jews of Shushan to do tomorrow as they have done today, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged on the gallows.'" Esther's asking the king if the Haman's 10 sons can be hanged on the gallows. Right. There's one problem with this, which is that we were just told a second ago that Haman's 10 sons were already hung. Why is Esther asking for this to happen again? What does she mean, allow the Jews to do tomorrow what they have done today? She seems to be asking for a repeat of history to take place. And if you want to get a little bit mystical, in Kabbalistic teachings, it is taught that whenever the book of Esther refers to the king, it is also a reference to God. God is never explicitly referred to in the book of Esther. So Esther is somehow, on a deeper level, asking God to repeat the hanging of Haman's 10 sons. What does all this mean? Well, maybe, just maybe, this could be an answer. Fast forward to October 16th, 1946, and check out this New York Times headline. Goering ends life by prison, 10 others hanged in Nuremberg, prison for Nazi war crimes. Doomed men on gallows pray for Germany. There were basically 10 Nazis who were hung at Nuremberg, and it was death by hanging, which, by the way, was a very uncommon form of capital punishment. Interesting. Do tomorrow as they have done today. But maybe this is just a coincidence. Now, it's interesting to note that there were actually 11 Nazis who were meant to be hanged, but one of them actually committed suicide, Hermann Goering, as it notes in the headline. And he committed suicide in his prison cell. And what's interesting is that Haman also had one more child, a daughter. And what happened to her? Well, she actually also committed suicide. Interesting. And by the way, Hermann Goering, the Nazi that committed suicide, was said to have actually worn women's clothing under his Nazi uniform. But maybe it's just a coincidence. But it doesn't stop there. What's interesting about the Nuremberg trials is that they ended in June 1946, but the sentencing were repeatedly postponed due to appeals for amnesty for Nazis. Strange. Now, hold that thought for a second. It's bizarre that you're getting appeals for amnesty for senior-ranking Nazis, but that's what happened. Now, let's have a look at the date on which these 10 Nazis were hung. It was on October 16th, 1946, but the Hebrew year was 5707, or in Hebrew, it's Tuf Shin Zion. As you can see over here, this is the Hebrew year, Tuf Shin and Zion, 5707. That was the date in 1946, October. Now, let's take a look at the book of Esther, where it lists the 10 sons of Haman being hanged. Someone with an astute eye will notice something peculiar about the Hebrew wording. There are 3 letters which appear much smaller than all the others. The first is over here, it's a Tuf. The second is a Shin, and the third is a Zion. Tuf, Shin, Zion. 3 letters much smaller than all the others within the 10 sons of Haman, written in the book of Esther. Now, imagine Esther 2,000 years ago. She's dictating her book to the scribes, and she tells them, when they get to the Tuf, make that a little bit smaller. Same with the Shin, same with the Zion. Why? Why did Esther want to do this? And it's remarkable that Tuf Shin Zion is the year that these Nazis were hung at Nuremberg. Do tomorrow as they have done today. But what was Esther's reason? Why did she tell the scribes to make those 3 letters smaller? She probably just said, look, don't worry, 2,000 years from now, they'll do a show on JTV and they'll explain it all. That's probably what happened. But isn't that quite remarkable? But guess what? It doesn't stop there. For anyone familiar with the Jewish calendar, and who, if they understand how it works, they'll know that when we write the year in Hebrew, we don't actually include the millennium. We assume you know what millennium we're in. It would also be too difficult numerically to write which millennium we're in, as it would require so many letters in Hebrew, because the letters correspond to a certain number. And therefore, Tuf Shin Zion, which we said is the year 5707, actually only equals the year 707. Tuf is 400, Shin is 300, and Zion is 7. So while it's quite impressive that the book of Esther has the year right, it would have been a little bit more impressive if there were a hint to the millennium of the Nuremberg trials. Or maybe there is. If it occurred in the Hebrew year 5707, then that means that it was the 6th millennium. It was the 6th time the year 707 has appeared in Jewish history. Now, what number does 6 correspond to in Hebrew? Well, it's a Vav. Well, guess what? In the listing of the 10 sons of Haman, there also happens to be one letter which is much bigger, not smaller, much bigger than all the others. Take a look. What is it? Yep, you guessed it. It's a Vav at the very end, which corresponds to the number 6. So we've got 3 small letters, which create the year 707. And then we've got one letter that's bigger than all the others, Vav, number 6. The 6th time 707 has appeared. So, I mean, you can look at this and you can think whatever you want into it. Most people will tend to be pretty amazed. It seems to be a pretty incredible coincidence at the very least. Now, remember what I mentioned earlier about appeals for amnesty and how crazy it is that they were accepting appeals for amnesty for Nazis. Well, the trial actually ended in June 1946, and had there never been appeals for amnesty, the Nazis would have actually been hanged in the year 5706, not 5707. And I'd be standing here today saying, look how close Esther came to the exact date. It was so close. But they ended up actually postponing the sentencing until after the Jewish New Year in October. So had there not been these appeals for amnesty, the year would have been wrong. And finally, have a look at this. This is a Newsweek article. It was written by an American reporter covering the trial and hangings. It says at the very end of the article, only Julius Streicher, one of the Nazis, went without dignity. He had to be pushed across the floor, wide-eyed and screaming, Heil Hitler! Mounting the steps, he cried out, and now I go to God. He stared at the witnesses facing the gallows and shouted, Purim Fest, 1946. You make your own mind up. Happy Purim.
So what do you make of that?
I'd like to see some evidence that those letters were those sizes before World War II. Off the top of my head, I don't know.
I mean, the thing though is that they are. I mean, I don't have the evidence right in front of me, but
yeah, no, you know how I am. I'm just saying, it's like on face value, it's like I can't go off on the significance until I do that one. I find the concept of the word Purim Fest kind of hilarious.
And see, here's the thing. I think that there's a side. You could almost view it that even within the most evil people, there's still the spark of God, and that's kind of like, in a way, you could view it like that's like maybe it was like God trying to say that look at it. Because the thing is that even if I guess I don't know. It's like one of those things where even if people misinterpret it, it's like where that type of thing, it's really hard to, if you discover it, it's hard to really, I mean, obviously it's not like proof, so you can't disprove it, but it's like it's hard to really diminish that because of how powerful it is.
Oh, exactly. That's like I was sharing with Jack Black, the one piece of evidence that I knew I had to follow my Roman dynasty wave theory to follow the rabbit hole, follow the trail to the dead end. And that was when I saw that with the spear of Longinus. And I saw that the name of the centurion who pierced Christ's side was Saint Longinus. And the Roman senator who, alongside Brutus, was the mastermind of the plot against Caesar was named Longinus. And that, he had, pierced Julius Caesar's side. And the piece that I'm sitting there looking at it, that it was like, this is just a bad joke, was when I looked up the feast day for St. Longinus, and it was March 15th, the Ides of March.
So do you think it's possible that it's basically it's kind of like almost like a name for like the spear piercer?
It could be. It's one of those that one etymology is from the Lance, but it's again, the name Longinus is from the Gospel of Nicodemus, which is one of the books that got tossed, and that's a fairly fairly early origin. At least some of the pieces is one of those quilted together works. I'm just saying that's not conclusive in and of itself. Yeah. As soon as I saw that March 15 date, Ides of March, it was like, I have to follow this thing to the end. And hopefully you can understand that.
Yeah. So here, let's watch this, and I think it'll probably be a good place to end off. But we should definitely do an episode on Purim some other time, and we could try to look at manuscripts that are older, so that you can see, and we can
another one that we definitely have to do that I looked up is Amalek. That's something that's worth of us diving into.
Oh, we could cover that for Purim, because the whole point is that it is connected directly to the idea of Amalek.
Yeah, no, that sounds like fun. Let's set that up.
All right, cool. Let's see. Purim fascination.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of This Week in Jewish History. This week, of course, we're celebrating the Jewish holiday of Purim, which is a commemoration of the events described in the biblical book of Esther, which, among other things, talk about the destruction of the enemies of the Jews, in particular Haman and his 10 sons, who were killed after they had attempted to destroy the entire Jewish people. In this context, we have an unusual 20th century historical event, which lends a kind of spooky element to the entire story. Let's have a look. This week, we can commemorate the holiday of Purim with an unusual story that occurred in 1946 in association with the Nuremberg trials, or the International Military Tribunal of various Nazi war criminals, in particular this man, Julius Streicher, perhaps one of the most despicable Nazis of the period. He was associated with propaganda vehicles that
one quick point, Ariel,
in the eyes of the official prosecutor's office.
I always hate when anybody says the worst about something awful like the Nazis. How do you determine which is the worst Nazi? You know, just tagging out on that.
Yeah. 1 second. Yeah. Any other thoughts in the meantime?
No, not a whole lot. Just listen along.
Okay, give me 1 second. Sure. Here. All right.
Jew Bader #1. In fact, towards the middle of the war period, he was too extreme. In his personal behavior, he was associated with all kinds of sexual excesses and so on, that even Hitler demoted him from his post, although he was allowed to continue publishing this magazine in particular, one of the most notoriously awful anti-Semitic propaganda vehicles of the day, known as Der Stürmer, which translates as the stormtrooper or the attacker. It combined pornography with anti-Semitism in a very heady mix that made a tremendously negative impression on the German people, and with its very strong associations of anti-Semitism. Let's have a look at just a few covers from Der Stürmer. Here's one that says, Wer ist der Feind? Who is the enemy? And you can see in the picture there a very anti-Semitic caricature of Jews, and the woman mourning her dead Aryan husband says Europe on her cloak and so on, and he's meanwhile getting away with all kinds of nefarious plans. This one here, you can see that the Jew is having the Aryan worker on a one of those little wheels that they give to hamsters, meaning his work is meaningless. At the bottom, you see the slogan of the period that had been popularized already by the historian Heinrich von Treitschke in the 19th century, Die Juden sind unser Unglück, meaning the Jews are our misfortune, the Jews are our problem. Here are the Jews as the devourer of all humanity. Here's another one that says the Jew looking on at the Aryan who was nailed to a cross, obviously with a leering smile on his face. And here, also very famously, an allusion to ritual murder, the revival of the charge that Jews somehow engaged in murder of small children, Christian children, for their blood, a canard that goes all the way back to the 12th century, and Der Stürmer was very active in promoting this. Besides Der Stürmer, he was also quite active in children's propaganda and published some extremely twisted works. Let's have a look at one of them here. This is Der Giftpilz, or the poison mushroom or toadstool. And the metaphor, the extended metaphor of this children's book was that the Jews look like regular people, just like poison mushrooms look like regular mushrooms. And you have to be really careful to be sure you're not eating a poison mushroom, a toadstool, rather than a regular mushroom. Giftpilz means the poisoned mushroom in German. And you can see here the caricature of Jews as toadstools. It included images like this one that shows a fat Jew sitting on a huge pile of money. The beginning of the German text says, Der Gott des Juden ist das Geld. The God of the Jews is money. In the background where it says Börse, that's the stock market. Here's another extremely offensive image, which shows the Jews as a sexual predator, a pedophile. The caption underneath, he's giving little candies to the children. He says, here, children, have some sweets, but now you have to come inside with me, etc. And he'll engage in some nefarious activities. So this kind of mixture, and believe me, I spent far too much time looking at awful images from his work. I'm only showing you just a tiny percentage of the depth of depravity that came out of Streicher's publication office. He was captured at the end of the war, and he was placed on trial in Nuremberg, that is the International Military Tribunals, and he was sentenced to death, along with 11 other, well, actually there were 12 altogether. 2 of them died before, including one of them that committed suicide in his cell. But on one particular day in October of 1946, they were all hung. Now, here's the kind of interesting thing that ties it to Purim in particular. Famously, as recorded by journalists who were there at the time, when Streicher came out and saw his own gallows, he pronounced Purim Fest 1946, meaning Purim Festival, Purim Party 1946. He was aware of the history of Purim. Der Stürmer had published an expose in Nazi terms of this holiday, but what he was not aware of is that there is an unusual and kind of uncanny echo of this in the Megillah itself. Here is an interesting rendition of one section of the Megillah, which describes the death by hanging of the 10 sons of Haman. Again, note that there were 10 Nazis that were hung in 1946. But there's a more fascinating and spooky kind of allusion. If you look at this medieval reproduction, early modern reproduction, you'll see that there's something that is typical of all Megillahs. In fact, this is the way the halacha, Jewish law, requires that Megillahs be written. And this is something that goes back centuries upon centuries. In the list of names you see on the
I'm brushing my teeth, but what are your thoughts on that?
No, that was exactly the sort of thing I was asking about before then. And you know, if it's a long-standing rule there, no, that's consistent with one of the theories that I've talked to you about the idea of Yahweh and the Bible sort of being a guidebook of how to do things. And that was basically written back then as to how you're supposed to do the execution these days. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, sort of almost a retro causality effect.
So you think because it was written that it happened?
Actually, you're Ouroborosing in here. It's you can't chicken or egg it. It's sort of because it happened on that date, they knew how to write the letters back then. That's a retrocausality effect. I can get into physics behind it, but you have to go.
So, well, one idea that is really interesting about this, that just like it fascinates me. There's this idea that because God is never mentioned once in the story of Esther, but there's this idea that he was present throughout it, or rather that she was present throughout it, because the name Esther, not only is it an allusion to, so first of all, her name is Esther, which is taken from Ishtar, but the thing is that her Hebrew name was Hadassah. Now, Hadassah means myrtle. Now, in traditionally, every god or goddess had like a tree or a plant they were associated with. You want to take a guess who the myrtle was associated with?
Don't know. Tribe, you're asking?
No, what tree?
Well, the myrtle's a tree.
No, sorry, what god?
Dionysus, wasn't it?
No. So he was associated with the vine. The myrtle was Venus.
Okay.
So basically, the Queen of Heaven, like it is just so wild. But so her name is Myrtle, which is the tree of Esther or of Ishtar. She takes on the Persian name Esther in order to conceal her Jewish identity. So there's this idea that she's concealing herself with basically feminine, divine feminine imagery, but more so that her name Esther means I will conceal. And there's this idea that God concealed himself within her, and that God did that in order to save the Jewish people. And again, it's one of those things where I would argue technically it's actually God concealed herself within her, because it's not like this part of God that's outside of reality. It's the part that's inside, which is essentially the part that's within all of us. So it's kind of like similar to this idea that, Jesus doesn't just happen to be the only Son of God. The idea is that he was able to realize that he was the Son of God. Given that would be the Jewish way of looking at it, because it's something that everyone is, but it's kind of like truly realizing that is another thing.
No, definitely. What you're saying makes a lot of sense. The other thing I would note with Esther is going further into the current day, you have it with more of the European oyster, which then becomes Easter, and a tag in there.
So the only thing with that though is, so Easter, that's definitely from like Oster or from like Ostara, but that's because it gets introduced via Germanic languages, because previously Easter was actually called Pascha from Pesach or Passover.
I know, but I'm seeing possibly, going back to some cognates with, basically descending from the name Esther, as opposed to it's maybe going out the long way around where the Germanic name was echoing back to the biblical times.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but it's definitely something we could look into whenever we do the Purim episode. So here.
Cool. You got to get going.
Column,
oh.
3 specific letters have to be written smaller than others. You can see here the letter Taf is written smaller than the others, the letter Shin, and finally the letter Zion. And these numbers, and no one knows, or no one has written at any rate for centuries why these numbers had to be written smaller, but it was pointed out in the 20th century that when you take these 3 letters together, they spell the date in Hebrew 1946, which was precisely the date when Julius Streicher pronounced Purim Fest, as he was one of the 10 Nazis that were hung. The parallels are uncanny and absolutely fascinating. Well, that's it for this week in Jewish history. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please have a look at the website and see if there's anything else you'd like to watch.
So let me just see if I can find a quick one, because I'm just taking this one quick dab before I go. And you always get a different perspective.
שושן הבירה, המאה החמישית לפני הספירה. המן.
Okay, yeah, I don't know French. And not everyone knows Hebrew, so let's see. Find a quick one. Where's that?
We've crash landed on an uncharted planet.
On March 10th.
There's something out there.
From the writers of A Quiet Place.
Riker, yeah, that's him. I had him one time, and he would get up in the morning before the trials, real early, and he'd he'd get all, he'd do his exercise on the floor, and then you flush the toilet, and you go from the toilet water. Now, these are big people. These are, Hitler's henchmen. Number 1 man, number 2 man, all of them. And that was funny to see. And then when he would get done, he's ready to go to court, And then we had their clothes out in another cell block. We take our clothes away from them when they're not in courtroom. And he'd ask for his clothes, we'd give it to him, and then he goes to the court, and he would ask for chewing gum. He always wanted gum. If whoever the soldier was, he asked for gum.
Did he get it?
Huh? Not from me. I never had it.
And Esther said, if the king sees fit, give the Jews leave to do as today, and hang Haman's 10 sons on the gallows tomorrow. Esther's tomorrow referred to a next day far in the future. 1945. Esther asked for 10, and 10 remained. 1946. Reports from the scene.
Jupiter Julius Stryker bellowed out that greeting and followed it as he climbed the 13 stairs with the words, "Now I go to God." Purim Festival 1946, and now to God.
Astonishingly, the Book of Esther, the names of Haman's sons are traditionally written with 3 smaller sized letters, spelling out Tashaz, the numerical equivalent of the year 1946, the year that the 10 Nazi war criminals were hanged. And Esther said, if the king sees fit, give the Jews leave to do as today, and hang Haman's.
Yeah, no, I think you got the point across where, yeah, it's a strong.
And may we pray for the day that this happens to the fascist regime that's not only preying on the Ukrainians but also on their own people right now in Russia, because like the parallels, it's so eerie. Literally, like almost like 110 years, or would it be 90 years? My math's terrible, but
It's closer. Yeah, no, it's closer to 90. I take a different tact, Ariel. I'd much rather the fascist regime in Russia see the error of their ways and stop being a fascist regime, so we don't have to blow more shit up. There's enough shit that's been blown up. Have them stop being evil and stop blowing shit up. That's my take.
I agree, but it's like you can't just expect that from a people that are literally committing genocide right now.
Oh, I'm not saying I expect it. I was telling you what I'd prefer.
Oh, 100%.
And you were basic. Yeah, I just wanted to offer a counter to hoping that that'll happen to Russia. My hope is that Russia, that they see the error of their ways and do that. If they don't, then you kind of have to resort to something like this. I still prefer my option A.
Yeah, but for all you know, it'll be the Russians who do it to their own government. That would be the best.
Wouldn't be the first time that happened.
Yeah, but except this time it would be justified. Well, not that it wasn't the other time, but they literally murdered them rather than just opposing them. But then again, I guess that's kind of how war works. Anyway, the topic for another time. Anyway.
Actually, I was thinking the British Revolution there. Tag.
Yeah. Anyway, on that note, I'll talk to you later.
Okay. You too.
Want to tell the Rebbe the words of the new song that we're singing with Mashiach, right? So I'm just going to read him. Am Yisrael, have no fear. Mashiach will be here this year. We want Mashiach now. We don't want to wait. Okay? Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now, oh yeah, Am Yisrael, have no fear, Mashiach will be this year. Am Yisrael, have no fear, Mashiach will be here this year. We want Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now, we don't want to wait. We want Mashiach now, we don't want to
Hey, Ariel, you're on mute.
Yeah, one moment I just realized that we're so close to being at like 33 minutes that I might as well just wait because we're almost there. So, yeah, so in the meantime, like what sorry, I just, yeah, it's like such a random thing to do. But anyway, so what did you, I mean, what did you, I mean, beyond the whole thing of like that you think it's kind of like an Ouroboros thing, like, I mean, like that's the type of thing that like I really don't know. Like basically, can you think of a way that doesn't use, you know, things that basically break our conception of reality in order to explain it? Like how
Retrocausality? Yeah. That's David Bohm's implicate order. It's basically there's a back propagating equation for the electron that physics just basically ignores because it's trying to predict the present and the future. So it ignores that aspect of it.
Sorry.
One thing I did want to get this out real quick. I firmly think that Justina Carrion is my writing partner. She was doing all the stuff that we've been talking about the narcissistic abuse techniques with you, and she signed off with a blowing a kiss.
Wait, what?
Justina Carrion, the one that was hassling you early on.
I don't. I mean, we can talk about it later, but
I just wanted to share that idea with you. Don't discount that possibility. But go on the red. We'll switch off of that.
But shoot, what was I going to say? Basically, shoot, I don't remember. It was
retrocausality.
Yeah. Basically, do you think that it's almost like a reverse Mandela effect? And let's just answer this with a yes or no. We'll talk about it for the Purim episode.
Yes, it's the idea of the present. If you know what's happening